Colleen. And now it's an opportunity for comments by the public on closed session items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. The board values comments received, but the law requires that board members not engage in a back and forth conversation on items not listed on the agenda. The board may, at its discretion, refer a matter to administration or calendar the issue for future discussion. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Board bylaws 9323 states individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda item or non-agenda item. The board shall limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. Ryan, are there any public comments?
As a reminder to the public, you can choose to raise your hand. There are currently no public comments.
All right, let's go to closed session. note, there was no action taken in closed session. Pledge of allegiance, or do you want to do that first? Pledge of allegiance. Salute, pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The approval
So hold on very quickly. Ryan, have we seen Mr. MacArthur back yet?
Yes, Dawn is back.
Thank you.
we got the approval of the agenda, and Mr. Harris, you had something.
Yeah, so I would ask that the board pull item 16C, the compensation increase for classified confidential group. There were some calculation errors on the sheet, and so we want to have that done at the next board meeting. And then if we could also pull item 17A, those are the policy updates, the special policy updates in regards to grading and distance working from home that were proposed by CSBA. And we're still working with staff to make sure that we've got the right information to bring those policies back.
Can I get it motion?
I will move to approve the agenda, removing item 16C and 17A.
Give me a second.
I'll second.
Linda, can you pull, please?
Agenda?
Yeah.
Mrs. Mazie? Yes. Mrs. Faulkner? Yes. Mrs. Reno? Yes. Mr. MacArthur?
Yes.
Mr. Magarino?
Yes. All right, special presentation, Smith River School Principal presentation, Nicole Cochran.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Go ahead and share my screen real quick. Hello, my name is Nicole Cochran. I am the new principal at Smith River Elementary School. I would first like to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to be the leader of this school. It's been an interesting transition this school year. Smith River has an amazing staff and students. I was transferred to Smith River right after Thanksgiving. Many of the pictures in the slides show were taken during the last couple of months. As you can see from the pictures, Smith River students were having a wonderful school year. I thought it was important to show the difference of just what roughly 40 days can make. COVID-19. As all of us know, COVID-19 has been life-changing. One of the things that is true for all of the staff at Smith River is that we miss our students every day. We worry about them every day, and we try to anticipate their hardships so we can improve their education moving forward. This emergency has cost us precious time, which will be challenging to make up during future years. Smith River response. In this slide, we have identified important responses to address the needs of our students. First, what does a new normal for teaching look like for our students? What does feeding our students look like? What does providing a safe environment look like for our students? In the next couple of slides, we will discuss each of these. The first step in providing services for our students is communication. Within the last 40 days, we have contacted all of our families at least 3 times. The first time was to ensure their safety and needs. The second time was to address their educational concerns. And the last time was to ensure their demographics information was correct in order to move forward with distance learning. We have also provided multiple robo-dialers and digital online messages through Facebook and our website. Smith River is contacting family members to provide learning, but also listening to their concerns through teacher office hours and office support. Then we take this information and we modify it to ask the question, what is best for our students? Emotional response. However, as we mentioned before, this is a difficult time for all of our students and staff. This is why one of the top priorities has been providing social emotional support for our students in need. We have provided this through Zoom meetings with special education staff and counselors working together to reach out to students. At times, Zoom meetings can be challenging to provide services for our families, but it's a lifeline that needs to be connected. And the families that are connecting to it are really responding well and are very appreciative. Nutrition services and custodial services. Every day, nutrition services staff serves close to 100 meals on site, which I believe will increase in the next couple weeks. We roughly have about 250 students enrolled at Smith River School. Those meals don't include the meals that are being delivered on the bus weekly. Therefore, we are still feeding the majority of our students every day. During mealtime, students are picking up classwork and supplies that teachers are preparing for them along with their breakfast and lunch. We have a small number of students that do not have Wi-Fi available, so packets are still the answer here. However, with a small team, we have distributed over 120 devices to our students. We are constantly sending out messages to ensure that our students have what they need because we care and we are genuinely concerned for their well-beings. Right now, we are lucky to have one custodian on site. He's working hard to deep clean classrooms and keeping the office and NPR cleaned daily. His hours were modified in order to cover some of the daytime custodian hours, which has worked well for our site. He has also assisted us when we handed out devices to ensure that we were safe and protected during that transition. English language development and special education services. Our ELD goal is major flexibility and keeping distance ELD learning comprehensible and equitable. We are using BGLAD. It is great for online ELDs such as interactive journaling and using Zoom to continue reading, writing, and listening and speaking in real time. Those deep jokes and bilingual stories will also continue to be read and uploaded into ELD Google Classrooms and grade level Google Classrooms. Our ELD staff are also co-teachers in Seesaw classrooms for our younger students. Our team is checking up on families without internet in their homes and making sure they are getting distance learning packets and COVID-19 information, because this can be really challenging for our non-English speakers. In special education, we are grateful at this time to have one full-time teacher dedicated to our site alone. This transition happened right before the COVID-19 announcement. So, oops, did you guys lose my screen? Sorry about that. Where was I? This transition happened right before the COVID-19 announcement, so this teacher has been able to focus specifically on Smith River students. He has met with his students on Zoom regularly and has continued to have special connections and interaction with his students. Our special education team prides itself on inclusive practices that are beneficial to all students. Our teachers have worked with our families to make sure they have what they need during this emergency by listening to them in Zoom IEPs, phone calls, and social distancing conversations. Challenges. This experience has challenges that are unprecedented. It is not just the loss of academics, but it's also the loss of social and community connection that defines the Smith River community. I feel that my staff has risen to the occasion and will continue to meet the challenges until their students are back on site. Accomplishments. Just this year, we have had amazing accomplishments. Before COVID-19, our Smith River girls won both the girls basketball JC basketball tournament, and the cheer competition. Chase Owen was crowned the chess champion of the district. Uriah Lee placed first in the spelling bee. And the Smith River boys won the Epperson tournament. And we are one of the few schools to show progress both in Ames Web and CAS testing. After COVID-19, we've engaged with the majority of our students through online learning in Zoom, Google Classroom, Seesaw, Flipgrid, and other software platforms that students already were familiar with. We have provided students with supplies that they need to be successful with distance learning, to include their musical instruments. And just today, our attendance in most classrooms was close to 80%. We know that these are lasting accomplishments, but our biggest strength is our students. Accomplishments are good for now, but we miss our students. Without these interpersonal relationships, we are not whole. I know every teacher is working hard to learn how to reach out to their students, because at Smith River School, that's what we're about. Love and compassion for our families, students, and community. This virus has been hard to live with, but it will only make us stronger in the end. Any questions?
I have a question about how many, roughly how many families are without internet access or devices because of the limited ability in Smith River?
So we have a majority of our students have already checked out devices. We've checked out over 120 devices to our families. We probably have a small group of students that I would say it was probably be under 20 that do not have Wi-Fi in their home.
Nicole, what's your take on the atmosphere of the community, how they're feeling, and I mean, are they asking you, do we see an end to this, and what direction are we going? Because I know your demographic is pretty broad. Yeah,
a lot of families right now are still struggling with the realization that we're going to online learning. We are making lots of phone calls to make sure students are in attendance, because we need to make this kind of have a routine to it for our students. It's hard for them, especially our special education parents. They're frustrated. They need more support than they have at home, and I understand that. But there's not much we can do because our hands are tied. Does that make sense?
And what about parents that have to go to work? How do they deal with that?
I haven't had a lot of families come and speak to me about their personal relationships about work, but a lot of the students are taking care of their siblings. So we have to take that in mind when we are giving lessons to our students. You know, how much time are they there? If there's not a parent in the home during those hours, how much work should they get at home? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Any other questions?
On average, how much work are you planning on giving to students to work on digitally or on packet wise, like an average a day that you're expecting them to complete? Because it is difficult if they're watching family members and such.
So the district right now is coming up with guidelines for all teachers on roughly how many hours each student should be spending at home. I believe the last draft was about 5 hours a week on seat time work. That doesn't include Zoom meetings or other things like a Flipgrid that a teacher might assign. But that way the student is doing roughly about 1 hour a night with a parent, especially because we have first responder parents that could be working all day, and then to come home and sit and do homework for 4 to 5 hours with their student, that's very difficult as a family.
Any other questions?
I want to add one more thing. So there's a lot of stuff that we're restructuring to do must do's and may do's for parents. So if they have more time, we're going to give them instructions so they can use that time. But we need to look at the essential standards that are put in place.
So I have a couple of questions. One, you mentioned that you're taking attendance. How are you doing that, and how often do you take attendance?
So right now this week is our distance to learning week with parents. So we're taking attendance based on participation. So if a student is in a Zoom meeting, if a student delivers something in Google Classroom or in Seesaw, that is noted. Teachers are noting that, and that is how we're taking attendance.
Okay. And then my other question had to do with kind of that parent support and the packets. What I'm finding is that a packet can get sent home, or we can be told, you know, help your kid get onto Zern online or something, but the underlying concept and how to teach that to our kids isn't there. There's an assumption that either the child knows what they're doing, or we're just kind of, somehow we're supposed to know how to teach our kids how to do fractions. So I'm wondering, as you move into the more distance education, are there going to be supports for parents on how do you teach this concept to your kid?
So there's a couple things that are already in place. The district has a new website to support parents. We also have office hours on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays where parents can call in to their teachers to get that information. How do I do this? Also students, as they attend more Zoom meetings, will get direct instruction through those platforms.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, no other questions? Well, thank you so much. That was an excellent report. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
You're welcome.
Bye. Right, let's move forward with the high school principal presentation, Mr. Randy Fugate.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Well, I feel like I've been talking on these sort of formats about this sort of stuff for hours in the last few days. So forgive me. I appreciate your questions as we move through it, because you're going to probably trigger things that I just moved through because I've been talking about so much of this. First of all, normally when we're presenting at this time, I'm sharing data and things like that. So I did want to share, we've got some great data. We have 100% attendance, 0 suspension. In the last 4 weeks, we haven't had a single discipline issue in our high school. The halls are perfect and clean, and the grounds are in top form. You should see our football field. You probably do see that because you come through. Things are moving along great. So COVID-19 has had some benefits, I suppose, in that sense, and I'm just tongue in cheek here. So as we kind of roll in, I really want to focus, like Nicole did, I'd like to focus on really what's happening now. That's really the most important things for what we're living through right now. When this all began, the high school, along with Sunset, all of us 912ers really got focused around our seniors initially because of credit issues. High school, it's all on the line right there for what happens next for graduation. So we've put a lot of energy into getting a hold of our seniors who are in credit deficient situations. We put a lot of energy into connecting with all of our special education students and all of our 504 students to make sure that they had the supports that were going to be needed for at that time was just enrichment packets, review, and or makeup work for the upcoming next few weeks. So that was a lot of our energy at that time. To date, kind of moving forward, where are we now? We've rolled into distance learning officially on Monday. We've handed out right at 200 Chromebooks up to this point. Most of our students are deviced up at home, it seems, at this time. And as of today, we've mailed out over 105 paper modules to families who are not in a position to either access internet, even with a device, or feel that their students may not do as well on an online platform. And I kind of anticipated we'd have around 20% of our population needing paper module work, but we may be under that. We're not sure. Well, there's still some unknowns. We've been making lots and lots of calls, 940 students. So it takes a long time to get some of those answers back. So we still have a few outlying answers to get. And so we probably will have a few more students needing paper and more that will be joining us. Even early on Monday, I had teachers let me know that some teachers had 95% attendance on Monday, the first day. Some were as low as 50 or 60%, but as this week's move forward, they're seeing a lot of participation, and that's really encouraging. So it also says, and I tease the kids when they come in to get a computer, I said, you miss us, don't you? So the high school kids, this is a big part of their life, their social part of their life, and their work for their future and their plans. So they're missing this. So I think the platforms that we're providing right now are going to be really essential for creating some of those links that they would otherwise be losing at this time. So as far as I was going to explain a little detail on our paper module piece, because this is probably the hardest thing for us. Thank you. I wasn't looking at the camera. So the paper module piece, we are individualizing every packet for every student. And so that's looking at their actual course load and working with teachers to develop the modules as closely, if not identically, matching what's happening online. And then we're mailing those out. So we're actually we've sent those out in the mail. Students will receive those at home. They'll be able to contact a teacher through a variety of means. Some students can access email and may choose that. Some will call in on teachers' office hours, which are posted on our website and other places for students to access teachers. So I heard some of those questions from the board, and those are definitely concerns. How are the students that are in paper mode going to get the necessary supports? And I think between their reaching out to teachers and teachers knowing who those students are, and they're not accessing through the internet or through the classroom digitally, they'll reach out as well and have been to connect with those students. So the students that are going to be accessing our Google Classroom platform are going to have more resources. It's the teachers are putting in. It's amazing what our staff has been doing for the last 3 to 4 weeks in terms of the professional development. It's been really exciting to watch. Every single teacher has Google Classroom set up for every classroom. They've learned all kinds of tech tools and usage to make those classes more accessible, more integrated, more engaging. So we've got a lot of that going on. And at the high school, we have a range of courses, everything from our real basic classes all the way to our AP. So any given teacher may have a range of students that they're working with, trying to accommodate and engage at those various levels, and trying to find appropriate tools for that as well. So I want to talk about grading a little bit. This has been a big concern, and we've really talked a lot at the high school about grading structures. I know tonight, later in the evening, you're going to be looking at some decision-making around temporary policies for this particular distance learning time in our lives. So the high school has proposed an A through D grading structure. We really worked around the idea of, in this situation, doing the students no harm. And that was sort of a language that came from the state too. And we liked that. We embraced that idea that our students can't control what's happened. We can't control what's happened. And so we want to do everything we can to make this a positive experience and not penalize students for maybe their inability to access something, maybe not having the best support that they were used to, or the routine that they may have needed, and it's not there. So we've talked about an A through D structure. That being said, I do want to share one of the things that we talked about is students that entered the first 6 weeks of the first grading period with an F and do not return to this learning period of time in any way, don't re-engage in any way, shape, or form, could still receive that same grade of an F because they had that coming in and did not come back to school as of April 20th through the rest of the year. We've really talked about if students had a passing grade and come back and re-engage, they can certainly improve that grade like you could any student anytime, any semester. Students who had a passing grade and do not come back for any number of reasons could suffer a grade loss, but we've really emphasized that they would not get an F at that stage, that the lowest they could go in that situation would be a D. So you'll see that in some of the proposal work that we've shared with the district. So in line with grading, I want to talk about a couple areas. CSUs and the UC systems. Initially, when COVID-19 came upon, they issued some language around seniors will be okay, held harmless, their grades won't matter coming into the fall. Since then, we're getting some nuances from the systems, and they're saying a senior who receives a D could be in danger of admission in the fall, but a student who receives a pass or a credit would be fine. And that makes sense, but in one way. But if you look at, let's say Arcata High School, for example, decides they're going to do a credit pass, fail, or credit, no credit, and a senior receives a D- in English, that student would receive a credit. The UCs would say, great job, you have a credit. Delmar High, if we do an A through D and that student receives a D, and we put it on the transcript as a D, the CSU UC system may say, oh, you didn't make it. And so it's a concern that we have. It's something that we're looking further into. And I want to throw that out to you just as you consider policy. We may be asking, if we're doing an A through D and that's approved, we may be coming back to you saying, hey, we need to talk about a pass, fail, or credit, no credit, because it's created some other challenges for us. So I'm just sharing that for food for thought for you. The other thing we have is athletics, and I can just say repeat. So for the fall, the questions are around eligibility and what does that look like for grades here? So a letter grade may have an impact on eligibility. When I look at CIF language, like this morning in the latest emails, they're really letting that be a local decision. So we may be all coming together to talk about what that looks like for our athletic eligibilities and how this semester may have affected students. So just, again, food for thought out there. So, and the last topic real quickly, and I don't have a lot to say about, is graduation. We're gonna be meeting with some seniors. I think Liz is gonna be there tomorrow, Mr. Harris and others. We're gonna be talking about all the various ideas that we've heard and what we could do. We have media arts team at the high school that's really excited to be a part of developing any kind of a virtual component that we might have if we aren't able to have any kind of a physical contact or space with people. So that's all being worked on, and good for you to know as you're in the public and people are asking what's happening. It's certainly been a topic almost daily. We just are working towards it. The most immediate needs have been around getting our education systems up and get distance learning in place and the home paper modules in place. And that's been really the focus for everybody, and getting training to use those tools too. So anyway, that's my presentation, and be glad to take any questions if you have them, and appreciate the time.
Randy, I have a question in regards to the classroom work. Will they be needing their textbooks? Because the concern is that, their textbooks are in their lockers right now and they don't have access to them. Will that work be requiring their textbooks?
No, at this stage, if there is information needed, that's being shared either online, or teachers are copying instructional pieces that might be needed, for example, for a math lesson. So they do not need their books. If a student wants to come to the high school, we've been letting the students come in to get things that they need one by one to do that. So they certainly could grab a book or a resource that they already have, but teachers understand that. So they're building in resources to help with what the learning is going to be expected.
I'd like to make a comment on graduation. I've spoken to a few seniors, and that seems to be more heavy in their mind than everything else is going on around them. And for generations, that's a rite of passage. And I would hate, would you agree with me? And I would hate to try to make it as personal as possible, not sterile. It doesn't have the same effect. So, also, I'd like to ask you a question. When you drive around town, do you see some of your students running around?
It's funny you say that, Frank. I don't get out much. I'm here all the time. So I don't see a lot of students out and around. I really haven't. I see them here.
I do. And I see them in groups and in their bikes and the skateboards. And,
okay.
When you go to school, in other words, I feel that they're losing that discipline and maybe going into a little bit of being feral. So I don't know what to do as far as how we can bring some of that discipline back into with all this distance learning that we're doing. Do you have any suggestions on that?
No, I don't. It's a valid concern, but what you're saying is the structures that we have in place aren't in place, and schools provide tremendous structure for students and families. It affects the way families work around their job schedules and all these things that we know. And so we're in new ground. And so distance learning doesn't have all those tethers. It doesn't have all those structures that we have control over. We've always said we're not in control of the students when they're not in school and the things that they have to experience or be involved in. It's more so now, because now those 7 hours that they were with us we don't even have control of that space and time anymore. So it's school in flex is what it is. So
I just wanted to say, kind of to that and to the grading that you were talking about of how do we decide how the grades are going to be and how they're going to affect eligibility for certain things. And to me, the hold harmless would be if they're trying to participate and there are barriers that they can't control that are preventing them. To me, that's the incentive for them not to be hanging around on the street corners. If there's that, look, if you are participating, even if you maybe can't quite get it as much as you did, but at least you tried, then we're going to grade you a little bit more leniently than if you just don't show up. So
right. I think that's kind of how we're seeing this. Keep in mind too, teenagers don't have, given the opportunity, they wouldn't keep a schedule like we keep anyway. And what we're finding is they're accessing their classes at 2 a.m. sometimes, or midnight. And because that's when they're awake and want to do it, and they don't want to do it at 9 a.m, so they're sleeping. And so they might be out with their friends at 10 or 11, but they're going to come back in later and do some stuff. Like I said, it's education in flex. What I meant, it's flexible, and it's like the craziest of all flex schedules, even more so than a college schedule at this stage. So we are living through this, but I'm getting these odd fun reports from teachers. Yeah, they were in my classroom at 2:30. Well, that's great. Okay. Yeah, so they're working. Yeah.
That's a big deal. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Don, do you have any questions?
Good job. I'm impressed.
Thanks.
Thank you, Randy. Well done.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Well, and before we do move on, I do want to give Randy, Tony, Rob, and Jeff a big shout out. Yesterday afternoon, they did a webinar answering a lot of these questions around high school. We usually do one webinar a week. We did 2 yesterday, one on distance learning. You'll hear from Tom a little bit later. But the high school folks did another one, and Allison joined in as well. And I believe there were about 125 unique logins to watch the webinar. So it was well done.
Let me see.
Yeah, it's recorded online.
All right, no other questions, so we're going to move on to District Special Education Department presentation. Brooke Davis.
All right. Hello, everybody. I always feel a little nervous when I'm the last one to go, especially going behind 2 people that did such a wonderful job. I think both of them expressed all of the work that everybody has gone through in the last 4 weeks. And I want to commend each and every one of the teachers, special ed, general ed, and administrators, paraprofessionals, in everything they're doing right now. I have seen more teamwork in the last 4 weeks that is just absolutely helping everyone cope with this. So I want to start off by sharing my screen. I did an overview of the special education programs, and then at the end, just addressing what we're doing in the school closures. So the very first thing I want to start with is I believe, and this is my goal and my message, Lisa Howard and I have talked a lot about this, is that every child is a general education child first, and that I really, really am working with my department to support each school site, to support the children who have special education needs there, and inclusion is our goal. So within that, we're committed to serving every single student in Delmar County Unified School District, and meeting their individual needs, having every single IEP really focus on those students and what they need, and to provide the best educational opportunities in the least restrictive environment. And what that means to me is, as much as possible, educating them side by side with general education peers in a rich, rigorous, and communal environment so that they can grow and they can benefit. So that is what our department does. We currently support 745 students age 0 to 22 at 12 school sites. And I forgot to include Uncharted Shores, so it's actually 13. We have 29 certificated special ed teachers. We have 110 paraprofessionals, multiple different job classifications, and 26 certificated and licensed designated service providers. So quite a big crew. Many of our paraprofessionals are site-based, some are itinerant, but most of our designated service providers actually are itinerant at multiple sites. We have different types of programs. Our focus right now is on a blended special education program. We have these at each site. They support students with special needs in a variety of settings. Our goal, again, is to provide those services in the least restrictive environment. So the general education classroom could be a general education classroom with co-teaching, could be paraprofessional support, targeted interventions, so going into intervention classes or in special education classrooms. And our goal is to make sure we're ensuring that rigorous core instruction by trained special and general ed teachers is provided with that individualization. We have what's called a therapeutic learning class at 2 of our sites and a blended program at a 3rd. We have a K-5 therapeutic learning class at Joe Hamilton, which serves kindergarten through 5th grade. We have 6th through 8th grade TLC at Crescent Elk and a blended 9 through 12 at Delmar High School. Each of these TLC programs is really there to service our kids who are negatively or adversely impacted by their behavior. And it really makes it difficult for them to access their education. The goal is to work collaboratively with students, family, and all agencies that provide support to those students. We do a lot of work with mental health, with rehab specialists, with probation, and it's really to develop pro-social skills, interpersonal skills, coping skills, so that these students can access their education and return as soon as possible if they've left their home school to their home school and to general education. We have an infant toddler early start program, and this serves our students 0 through 2. It is a home-based program. The students in this program have what's called an IFSP, which is an individual family student plan, and it really focuses on supporting the parents in the home environment in ways that they can support their student with special needs. We have an entire team that is our early start team. It includes a speech therapist, school psychologist, a teacher, and then 2 preschool teachers that also assist in that program. We have special day classes for some of our students that have more significant cognitive and developmental disabilities. Those are at 4 sites throughout the district. Mary Peacock has the pre-K special day class. Bess Maxwell has 1st through 5th. Crescent Elk 6th through 8th, and then Delmar High 9 through 12. Again, this is a focus on more functional skills and curriculum, communication, independent living, and then beginning vocational skills as we transition to adulthood. We have an adult transition program, which is for our adult students who have completed their 4 years at Delmar High School, but have not yet graduated with the diploma. And it is a wonderful program that focuses on vocational training, ongoing functional skills, and really supported transition into whether it's independent work, supported work, or another adult program as they become adults. They currently serve 11 students, and I am really involved in that program. It's close to my heart. We also have the Transition Partnership Program, TPP, and Workability. I just need to give a shout out. I want this program to come maybe at a future board meeting and do a presentation. They are awesome. They support all of our students, 14 through 22 in vocational skills. It's highly successful. The job placement specialists and coordinator have worked diligently over the last at least 2 years, and have grown the program so that they actually added a new jobs placement specialist. They were able to get additional funding. Workability is offered to students 14 through 21, and it's all about providing training and instruction in soft and hard work skills. And the only thing you need to qualify for this is to have an IEP. And then the TPP program is through the Department of Rehab, and it offers paid work experience, which really sets the stage for transition to work. Many of our students actually, as they leave the high school, are already going into either paid work or into work training programs. And again, I can't say enough about this program. They are awesome. We also have designated services, speech language, behavioral services, occupational therapy, physical therapy, ERICS counseling, which is educationally related intensive counseling services, and psych services. So I did want to give a great shout out for all of our work with MTSS and inclusive strategies. Our first important stat is that 78% of our students in special education attend general education classes for more than 50% of their day, meaning that we say we're inclusive, we're working to that. I would love to have by the next by next year, have that be up to 90%. And then eventually, people who know me, I would love to have as close to full inclusion as is possible. I do have some comparison data that I thought was very important for the board to know. The number of students with autism in our district rose from 61 to 101 between 2015 and 19, which is an increase of 65%. We had the number of students who qualified for special education with other health impairment rise from 62 to 103, which is an increase of 66%. Both of these are very service intensive IEPs. Many of the students need very specialized services through speech language, through behavioral services, occupational therapy, possibly counseling. And so again, those increases have impacted how we can provide services and what we may need additional support in. We had a reduction in the number of students that qualified for specific learning disability, about 10%. And then our overall population has grown by about 10%, even though in the district, our district population isn't growing. So I wanted to point that out as well. The state percentage for special education is about 12.5%. That was from 17-18. And our current percentage is 17% and sort of on the rise this year. So we have a larger population that needs special ed services to access their education. And I think a lot of the trauma that our community has experienced really does impact that need for special ed services. And then this last year, were unable to fill 3 of our classified certificated teaching positions and multiple classified positions. And I know the board is highly aware of this. So just wanted to share that information. We're also in what's called differentiated assistance for students who qualify for special ed. And so in academic achievement in math and English language arts, there are great disparities in academic performance. The district in ELA was in orange. They maintained at a negative 39.4. Students with disabilities were at a negative 111.4. So quite a big gap, and we need to address those disparities. And I have some things that we have been doing and some ideas about things moving forward. In math, the district is a minus 70.1. Students with disabilities is a minus 138.1. So again, these large differences in achievement. In suspension rates, this is one of my biggest areas of concern and why I believe we need to support social emotional learning and support mental health for our students that are struggling in special education. The suspension rate was 5.0 for the district. For students with disabilities, it was 10.8. So double that of the district. So it is a very, very important thing that I feel like we need to focus on in special ed. And then chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism is a real topic at the state level. I am less worried about this because many of our students with disabilities also have a lot of other medical issues that do prevent them from being at school every day. But again, I wanted to share the data that put us in differentiated assistance. So implications, really great program information from this year. All of our schools are implementing multi-tiered system of support. They're at different levels, but those that started the work as pilot schools are showing really, really good academic, behavioral, and attendance growth. So that is just, it bodes well for us moving forward. Two schools I want to shout out to Mary Peacock School and Smith River School, both really highly focused on inclusion, and they were in those pilots. Everybody else is close behind, so we want to improve those ELA and math scores. And what we wanted to do this year, and we've been working on, is really access to that rigorous core for all kids. So all kids have access to Common Core standards. We want to have training for our SPED teachers in that Common Core so that they know how to best support each of those teachers. We have implemented co-teaching across all of the different grade levels, and it's being very successful. We realized we had some problems with how we do that, what training we need, but we're moving forward, and it is growing. We had a lovely training back in October on universal design, which really is the strategy of front loading and front planning for all kids. And so really planning for the kids on the periphery to give all kids access. We really need to individualize their access points, and we're working with Gen Ed on that. We've worked on differentiation and tailoring learning specifically to individual students, and we've worked on improving attendance and reducing suspensions. So to do this, I believe we need to, number one, focus on where we have the biggest leverage, which is to hire and retain high quality special ed and general ed teachers. My goal is to have no vacancies, and I think I'm pretty close. I know that I want to give a shout out to personnel department. Colleen Parker is awesome. She has been working really hard. We were able to hire all so far of the vacancies. That is my understanding, and I can double check that with her. For certificated, classified, definitely. I want to continue transitioning to more full-time positions. I want to have another full-time behaviorist, fill our speech therapy vacancy, and hire a district physical therapist. I want to provide ongoing high-quality professional development supporting all staff in inclusion in MTSS. I need to give a shout out to 3 people who are absolutely amazing right now. Ray Fearing, Leslie Machado, and Ryan Botten. Getting Aludo up and running. This new platform is going to benefit us having everyone have access to ongoing professional development. I see it seamlessly continuing next year and really being a way for us to get PD out to all staff, no matter if they're classified, certificated, licensed, making sure that's happening. Want to continue to implement MTSS and have special ed work in tandem with our general ed peers. Lisa Howard is leading that. I want to continue to utilize UDL and really, really support UDL in all gen ed classrooms as a way to give access. And I want to continue to grow co-teaching and make it part of what we do. So the next is distance learning. And I think that Nicole spoke eloquently to how difficult this has been. Beginning in March, we transitioned to this distance learning model that we have worked in special ed to work side by side with gen ed and tailor to the best benefit of each student ways that they can access their education. We have teachers who have their distance learning classrooms who also co-teach with gen ed teachers now. We have services beginning via Zoom, individual and small group, and we also have all of our resources linked through the COVID-19 page. there have been bumps in this implementation. I'm going to tell you right now, huge bumps. We know we have areas that we can improve, and we're working actively daily on them. But I commend our staff and our families. I need to say how much I appreciate our families on all their hard work and persistence through this difficult transition. I know that it is difficult, and I think that Mrs. Mazie spoke to this. How do I teach that? I'm not trained as a teacher. It's compounded when you have a child who needs specialized instruction. So are there any questions for me? I talk sort of fast, I'm sorry.
Are services still being offered? I mean, you said through Zoom, but like, how about for families that don't have access or limited access to technology, the web or computers? How are we getting access to them of some of like the SPED, language pathologists, some of that other training that we use? Usually it's face to face.
Yeah, so there's two questions I heard. First is, how are we doing those lessons? That's transitioning in, and just as Gen Ed just started their online learning, this week is when we are starting in SPED. And that's a growing pain, because what a small group instruction might look like in a special ed class or push and co-teaching looks differently on that format. How do we reach those people who don't have access? It's consultation by phone. It is by email. It is some of our families. We've sent the school resource. David Hernandez, who's our attendance officer, has gone out and made direct contact with families for us. We are trying everything we can to be creative. I know many of our teachers, especially in our specialized programs, created mirror materials. So students that needed visual supports, that had visual schedules, that needed certain manipulatives, that needed their AAC device at home, all of that is at home now. They spent hundreds of hours doing that. Have we been successful reaching everybody? No. I have a work packet for a family I've been working for 3 weeks to try to hook up. They're homeless. They live out on the beach. And so again, we are working our best effort within that.
I have a question too. Going back to differentiated assistance, explain to me the numbers, minus 35, minus 111. What does that refer to?
It refers to, and again, I am not as versed in the actual language of the state. Leslie would be the person to really answer the question, but to be on level or proficient, to be green would be that 0 mark and above is my understanding. And so that orange goes to yellow, yellow goes to green, I think green goes to blue. And Jeff and Tom could probably give more information, but we are in the red, which means we are significantly below where we need to be with our students. And we realize that part of it is that we are not giving access to that core rigorous instruction. And so that's what our goal has been.
Is it a similar story with the suspension rates and chronic absenteeism?
Suspension rates, I think truly it is in regards to our students that qualify under other health impairment and emotional disturbance. If you were to dig down, some of the students that are struggling most in our district are students that have those social emotional difficulties, and that's how they qualify for special education. Sometimes what happens is discipline is happening before we realize that they need to be assessed for special ed. And so we're trying to be proactive. We've been working with our school counselors. We've been working through MTSS to identify students ahead of that. But I think what is an alternative to suspension for students that are having some pretty egregious behaviors? We need to get creative. We need to really put supports in place. I've worked closely with Mary Peacock on their alternatives to suspension. It takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of effort on the general ed side. And so this is something that we're trying to, coordinate But definitely students with those social emotional difficulties are being suspended at a higher rate.
Okay. And if I understand you correctly, 0 is the goal there also?
Oh, yeah. I would like to not suspend anybody. Absolutely. I would love to be able to have
Is that a percent then?
I believe it's a percentage, yes.
Okay. Then I also have a question with regard to the under important stats. Who is responsible, for instance, for the diagnosis of either autism or specific learning disability?
So
rated within our system?
Autism is not a diagnosis that we make. It is made by a professional. Our local agency that assesses students for autism is the Redwood Coast Regional Center. So any diagnosis of autism would come from an outside agency. Other health impairments, specific learning disability, those are ones that are assessed and qualify through our psych services.
Okay. It's interesting that that's falling while autism is increasing, just to notice it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
So these numbers that you got, this is before the shutdown of the facilities?
Yeah, these were numbers that were shared with us through the SELPA. Mindy Fattig has been providing us with our numbers through the last 5 years. And so I received these, I want to say February at our last Superintendent's Policy Council meeting.
So we can only imagine they're probably, if we were to take a picture right now, it'd probably be a lot worse, huh?
Well, I think for me, when I look at this, it's not really a positive or a negative. It's just, where do we need to really focus our resources, our PD work, what we are doing. When I look at the fact that we have a 65% rise in students with autism, I need to be making sure that I'm providing special professional development for all of my employees so that they have the tools and skills that they need to, within the general ed environment and within specialized academic instruction, provide services as needed. And so again, I think it's driving what our work should be and where we need to be going as a district with our professional development.
You mentioned one of your teachers are actually out in the field making contacts with the
it's not one of our teachers. It's not a teacher. It is David Hernandez, who is the district attendance officer, and he is out touching base with families for a myriad of other reasons as well. And he stepped up and he offered to do this. I know that Mr. Harris can probably speak a little bit more to this, but we have a list of kids that we haven't been able to reach, and David is actually going out and doing home visits to see if he can contact those families for us.
What's his feedback?
I don't know, because I'm not a site principal.
Has he given you any feedback on what he's seen and his interaction?
I would have to ask, probably Rob Parker could address this question maybe at the next board meeting. I am not a site principal, so I do not provide those names to David. David is communicating with site principals. So, and I know that Rob is coordinating it. So I can get that information back to you at the next board meeting.
Okay. I just feel like they're the worst hit segment of the school. I mean, they're suffering the most than anybody else, and I feel bad. And I wish there was something that we can do to reach out to them even on a person-to-person, even if you maintain that 6 feet distance, or just kind of so the student can see their teacher and just kind of reach out to them to a more extent than what we're doing now, other than just sterile Zooming. And is there any possibility of that?
Yeah, and mine is only one experience of 700 and some odd families, but and my son is in a high functioning category, but he is used to having an IA with him all day in class and helping him focus on his work and helping him know where to go on the online stuff and know what to do in the what are you supposed to be working on now? Pay attention to your schedule. He has none of that now. And it all falls on us as the parents. And I still have a full-time job. I'm in one of those essential services. And so to try to carve out time to sit down with him and keep him focused, I am having to learn how to do his schoolwork. I'm having to learn how to access Google Classroom because maybe all his classmates know how to do it, but he doesn't necessarily, and the teacher is just she's giving out instruction to the general ed level kids in her class and saying, go on Zern or go on Prodigy or go on this. And I'm having to learn how to do that. And so I think we need to be doing something with the IAs that would normally be working with these kids to reach out to the families. And even if they provide that support remotely, and I think I am also suffering from the fact that Redwood does not have a special education teacher right now. And so all of that wonderful contact that is being done at some of these other school sites where they have the special ed teacher, that's not happening for me. We are finally connecting with his speech therapist, but at one point, the conversation that I had was we're going to modify your IEP so that all services are consult only. And that was not acceptable. We have to figure out how to provide some of these supportive services. So I think I understand it's a work in progress. I understand that it's new for everybody, but I think we need to be entirely aware that these kids can't access the digital services in the same way that their typically developing peers can. And we have got to give the families additional support. Both my husband and I are college educated. There are a lot of folks out there that aren't. If we're struggling, I can't imagine how some other parents are trying to figure all this out. So I hope the contact is happening like you think it is, but I'm kind of wondering.
And it's a major setback.
It is.
It's a major setback. So I think that we need to come up with something that maybe have more people go out in the field, or maybe even bring some to sterile classroom, have there something that to have them from regress. I don't know. I don't get the answer.
And I will say, I think Tom's going to share a little bit of that when you do your distance learning, have your distance learning conversation a little bit later. So I think we'll see some other things there that'll kind of go hand in hand with what Brooke presented. But just know that special ed is probably one of the most complex components of what we're doing with this kind of crisis learning. We have some incredible teachers they've been reaching out from day one. They've been contacting families from day one. They've been documenting those conversations. They've been doing some things. But like you said, Charlene, I think we have had just normal teacher turnover, normal staff shifts that have occurred through these different processes. And if you recall the first week of all this, it was just like, hey, we don't have to provide any special education services at all because this is all just enrichment and if you want to do it type stuff. And then it quickly evolved, I should say, into provide FATE for special needs students to the fullest extent possible within this kind of crisis and distance learning environment. And so we've been having lots of great conversations. I had some great conversations with DNTA on Tuesday afternoon about what was going on in the special education world with documenting these contacts, documenting goals that were being addressed and those kinds of things. And so honestly, we've got some of the best folks working out what that looks like in this kind of bridge week to the distance learning. And I'm sure Tom will share, and if he doesn't, at the end of his presentation, I think I would like to share our website and the resources that we're putting together for families, for all families, to be able to access the tools that students will be using. So,
we really need to do something to reach out because I think that's probably the worst segment that we have here. What about augmenting the staff that we have now, and maybe bring in some substitute to bring in more force, more backup.
So I think the issue really kind of revolves, Frank, and I think this may be a bigger conversation. This really isn't a board conversation piece right now. It's a report.
Yeah.
So I think we can talk a little bit more, but you know, our teachers know their students, our teachers understand what's going on. I think the next real all of this is kind of what Charlene had mentioned too. And we did have this conversation in one of our morning principals meetings, and that is getting the IAs that typically support our students and support our special education teachers really involved in this process, if they're not already, and many of them are, to say, what does it look like when we come on to Zoom and we do breakout rooms where IAs can directly support students. And I've seen some wonderful examples of this distance learning and teaching going on. So again, I think there are some opportunities to really kind of build out what's going on. Part of the conversation, I think you brought it up, was about going out to homes or having kids come in. At this point, because of the stay-at-home orders and because of some of the other issues, and because of the health concerns, really having people go out to homes is not something that is being supported, recommended, or I think even allowed at this point. And bringing students in, the only way we're even able to do like the limited childcare that we are doing, and that's babysitting, that's not teaching, that's just babysitting, is a core group of students that comes together with a couple of people who come with them in a very limited way, and you can have no more than 10 in there, and that's it. No one can join. If anyone leaves, you can't replace. It's a very structured and strict protocol at this point. So I know that our teachers are dying to be with their kids. Our kids are dying to be with their teachers. And the soonest that we can do that, the soonest we can possibly ease those restrictions, I think everybody would be a lot happier. So that's just kind of where we are in this process.
How do we handle that, let's say, during the summer? What's the procedure during the summer with the special ed kids?
We really, well, there may be summer school. So if a student, if the IEP team determines that because of the particular disability that the child might regress over the summer, they may qualify for summer school. Summer school is a few weeks of some limited instruction.
Only 2 weeks.
Yeah. So it's not long at all. But as long as the stay-at-home order and the social distancing orders are in place, we're not even going to be able to run summer school the way that we've been able to run summer school in the past. So, and that's only for our special needs students that wouldn't be, and those only for special needs students who qualify for summer school programs. It's not for every student or every special education child.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question. So we got a few emails over the past couple weeks about speech therapists and the caseload. Do you have openings on those positions, or what's the plan with speech therapy?
Can you clarify the question a little bit as far as
the emails are kind of referring to that their caseloads are higher than what they should be?
The speech therapist. Okay. Well, our speech therapists have caseloads that vary. We have from a low of 55 up to a high of 70. So there is variance in that. I think they have in the past, and mind you, I have not gotten any recent information from my speech therapist in regards to this. In the past, they have said 55 is the ASHA recommended caseload. However, it is not a licensure or a credentialing limit. And so we have done our due diligence to keep those caseloads between 55 and 60. We also have 3 SLIPA positions, which are the speech language pathology assistants. We were just able to hopefully offer our 3rd one this week. And those staff work side by side and independent of the speech therapist, providing direct services. Definitely, if we could drop that number, it would provide more opportunities for more teacher contact, more support for training. But right now, I don't believe that there is any plan to increase that staffing, but I could come back at a future meeting with some more specific information if you would like that.
I think, I'm trying to pull up the email here. I think it referenced somebody maybe retiring or resigning. And so they were going to be short.
Yeah, that's a vacancy that will be filled.
That will be posted. Okay, I just wanted to confirm that.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, that one we actually do. I believe it's already posted. We had interviewed somebody, but they did not accept.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
So I am just curious to follow up on this because the emails that we've gotten have been very specific in what they think should happen. And I'm just curious if the speech department has communicated those very specific requests to you.
I can say that in the past, the speech department has communicated to me that they believe that their caseload should be at 55. And that's something that's been shared with district leadership. We've worked diligently to keep the caseloads within, like I say, that 55-60 range with additional support of our SLPAs and our speech aids. So yes, they have communicated that with me. You know, we have influxes sometimes of kids that come in. I know one of our most impacted areas right now is preschool. Our Part C to Part B, meaning our 3-year-olds coming on board. We have a very large population coming in to our preschool programs who qualify for speech language services due to diagnosis of autism. And so the speech therapist that actually serves those students has the highest caseload in the district.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Brooke.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, going to move on to public comments. Opportunity for comments by the public on non-agenda items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. The board value comments received, but the law requires the board members not engage in a back and forth conversation on items not listed on the agenda. Board members may at his discretion refer a matter to administration or calendar the issue for future discussion. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Board bylaw 9323 states individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The board shall limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. Brian, do we have any public comments?
Yes, there's one public comment. Actually, a couple in line here. Sarah Mitchell, you are now allowed to speak.
Thanks, Guy. I actually had my hand up for a comment on the previous presentation, if that's okay, real quick first. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay, I just wanted to say in answer to the IAs supporting people, I just do know that there are IAs out there. I don't know that it's necessarily like a district-wide, directive, but I do know that there are IAs out there zooming in with classrooms and supporting students. So I just want to make sure that we do know that there are IAs. I know that there are IAs being very flexible with what works with teachers around all the other Zoom meetings they have. So I just want to make sure our staff are getting credit. The ones that are, working hard to make sure that they provide that support. I know there's IAs zooming into gen ed classes, into special ed group sessions. So I just want to get that out there for that. And then for my public comment, I just wanted to say, I'm going to speak as Sarah Mitchell, the parent of a 6th grader this time. The reason I want to bring this up is it's the second time it's happened. And I just want to address the comment about seeing kids all over town, because I'm not seeing this. And when it's said, it's making it sound like our kids are out being careless and causing some kind of a ruckus. When what I'm seeing when I'm out and doing my essential business is our kids and families seem to be doing their best to uphold the many expectations that are being asked of them, including the staying at home and social distancing when out. So I don't mean to sound offensive when I say this, but it feels like that comment is fishing for someone to agree with it. again, what I'm seeing is people in our community are stepping up during these uncertain times, and I believe it would benefit us to recognize that. And then secondly, I'd just like to say that Miss Hoffman, my daughter's 6th grade teacher at Crescent Elk, has just been absolutely amazing. I know that this is super hard for the teachers. It's been hard as a parent, but she's been providing lots of instructional support, Zoom specific to the lessons that they needed to go through. She's really taken some of the stress off of me of having to try to do those YouTube videos to learn how to do those, fractions again or whatever it is. So I just want to make sure that we say, she's just been given lots of opportunities for my daughter to get feedback, and my daughter looks forward to that contact with her. I know even I look forward to that text from her. So I just want to say thank you to all the amazing staff, parents, and students that are beyond resilient. And I know we will overcome these challenges. So hang in there. You're all doing great. And thank you to everyone.
Ryan, any other public comment?
Pam Rosen.
Hi, thank you. I am Pam Rosen. I'm a special education teacher in the therapeutic learning class at Joe Hamilton Elementary. And I wanted to address the board this evening about some thoughts and concerns I have as DNUSD moves forward. I want to start by saying that the staff in all classifications are really stepping up during school closures to try and reach every student and family and meet their academic, social, emotional, and nutritional needs. Teachers are stretching their capacity to learn how to teach in an entirely new format with little to no guidance on what that should look like or how it should be done. The level of demand on staff from management in some cases is greater than it ever has been, yet the level of respect continues to lag significantly behind. I feel decisions may have been made in panicked, rushed, or in just inconsiderate ways instead of planned and carefully thought out before asking more of teachers. For example, when school closures first began, special education teachers were asked to write detailed amendments, to include how to address all student IEP goals through distance learning. If you're familiar with special education, then I'm sure you know that many students' goals simply cannot be addressed in distance learning formats, as you guys have already mentioned before, for a variety of different and individual reasons. Nonetheless, teachers took on a seemingly impossible task and developed detailed amendments in consultation with all members of the IEP team and service providers, including parents. It was attached to the current IEP, was shared with parents, and required their consent. After doing all of that, this week we were asked to complete distance learning plans for every student on our caseload. These were more detailed versions of the amendments we already spent countless hours doing. These didn't require signatures. They weren't going to be shared with parents. We were told they were just a form of documentation. We were told to do it on Monday. Then 2 days later, received an email forwarded from Tom telling us not to do it after I personally spent hours and hours getting mine completed. This took time away that I could have spent developing instruction and support for my students and their families. While I feel fortunate in this situation to be pretty tech savvy, I feel greatly for my colleagues with less experience and confidence using technology who have large caseloads and for the parents and families of our students. The pressure for both teachers and parents are feeling is unsurmountable. I get daily calls, texts, and emails from my colleagues who are struggling to figure out how to reach their students and contact families while learning new technology, sifting through the hundreds of resources being thrown at us, attending dozens of Zoom meetings, competing in district professional development contests, documenting everything, and trying to teach their own children at home. Parents are feeling the same pressures of figuring out how to teach multiple children while carrying on all other family responsibilities, working and dealing with technology issues, and a lack of clear expectations from the school district. Certificated staff are taking on all of this new responsibility, putting a smile on for our students and all of their pets, and we still haven't settled on a contract as this school year is winding down. It is my understanding that one of the hangups right now for the contract are the issues of retro stipends and retro hourly pay. And special ed teachers are a big group of people that are affected by retro stipends. If you can't value our time with the things you ask us to do and then tell us not to do, at least value it with a settled contract that includes those retro stipends for our hardworking special ed teachers. Thank you for your time.
Ryan, any other public comments?
Yes, Jen Longry.
Hello, everyone. Jen Longry here from Delmar High School. I just wanted to kind of comment here for a second on some of the things that have been asked of us at the high school and some of the things that we haven't been asked to do, because I've just been hearing some, like, I don't know, it just seems like there's misinformation out there. So when the distance learning thing first happened, the middle of March, the high school staff were asked to contact students and families. We were not asked to call every student individually. I have over 150 students, and if I were to have to call them every week, that's all I would do. I would have no time to develop curriculum, no time to send emails. Like, I would have no time to do anything. So many of us, as we've already been doing throughout the year, have been emailing. I've sent Facebook messages. I've received Facebook messages. I've received Snapchats from students or like siblings that I've taught before. I've been doing Zoom calls. I have one scheduled tomorrow for all of my classes. So we are contacting students in a variety of ways, but we were not told that we had to call home. And I just want to be clear on that. I think there's a few different reasons there. And I think Randy kind of mentioned that office staff was calling, like counselors, secretaries, and they were keeping track of it on one document and just trying to be really clear. Part of the reason for that was we didn't want families to have like a barrage of, 7, 8 teachers calling home in one day. And I just want you also to all know that this is a really tricky time for everyone, for our students, for us, for our families, for everybody. And we're all doing the best we can, and we're trying the best we can. And our students are just, all they want to know is that we're there for them. No matter if it's a phone call, a text message, a Facebook message, a Zoom, an email. I've sent 100 emails in the last 2 days just to students, like, not even joking. So we just need to remember that this is about students, and it's about us making sure that they feel safe as they can in this situation, and that they feel like they have a support system. To kind of lead out here, we are only between DNTA's last, oh my gosh, I can't think of the word. Between our last proposal, there we go, and the district's proposal, we're only about $10,600 away. And a lot of these people, as Pam so eloquently and beautifully said it, are special ed teachers who have been working overtime, literally, to be able to meet all the requirements that they're asked to do. So please settle this now, do what you can. Thank you for your time.
Ryan, any other public comment?
Yes, Miriam.
Okay, so can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you all for continuing to meet and to have these Zoom meetings so that we can, have our public comment. I just would like to read to you part of email that Jeff Napier sent out on March 27th. It was an afternoon update. Jeff said that he would like to recognize all of you, and this went to teachers, for the resilience, dedication, and spirit you have all demonstrated in what I'm sure is a defining moment in our collective lives. And then he goes on to say the dedication to our students, families, and community demonstrated by all of you is truly commendable and makes me so proud to be part of this district and community. And to that, I mentioned to my friend who I was sitting with having dinner, I said, wow, I wish that he would put his money where his mouth is and get this contract settled, since we are so very close. And keeping in mind that this is money that has already come to the district. This isn't new. This isn't recession, oh my gosh, ongoing contract. This is from the past, from over a year ago. Please make this happen for us. Thank you.
Ryan, any other public comments?
Angela Stanley.
There we go. Good evening. I would just like to commend all of the staff again for their very hard work and their ability to adapt and provide all three of my children with an education, distance learning style. My children, I've been having to do work ever since the temporary closure, but being able to relinquish some of that back to the teachers, even with my assistants, is greatly appreciated, and I appreciate all of their very hard work. My other concern that I haven't heard addressed at any of these meetings so far is, are there any discussions about how you're reaching out to those students who came to school because it was their safe place? School is where they were safe and taken care of and loved 7 hours a day. And now they are in homes where that is possibly not the case. My high school student mentioned a friend of his that doesn't necessarily have a great home life. And I said, if he needs a place to stay, you let him know he can come here. That's one student. I'm concerned about those students that hopefully the teachers are aware, hopefully the staff at the schools are aware of who those students could possibly be. But there's lots of students who won't open up and talk about that. Is there any plan on how you can do anything to help protect those students? Thank you.
Ryan, any other public comment?
Yes, Brenda Robinson.
Hi there, this is Brenda Robinson. I'd like to say that, first of all, I want to thank the school board and Brooke Davis for the immense support that we've had in COVID-19 crisis. It has been, I'm sorry, I could get emotional on this. It's been really hard for those students accessing education and those of us professionals that are trying to do the best that we can in helping those students and the parents provide that support. There's a few points that I'd like to make, and please understand, I'm not attacking any certain individuals with their information. I'm just sharing more information that might help enlighten the current situation. And that is that things are changing daily. One thing that I need to discuss is the fact that our caseload size in the area of speech language pathology is not the ASHA, which is American standards, American National Association standards. It is the caseload size of 55 is recommended by the State Department of Education in California under the guidelines of special ed services. And you can find that in our internet link to California State Department of Education speech language pathology guidelines on caseload sizes, which is a recommended caseload size of 55. I just wanted to make that clarification that it's not a national guideline. It is also a California state guideline. Brooke is working diligently in addressing our weekly concerns about caseload size. We do bring that up to her. And the other thing that I want to state about that is that our speech language pathology assistants who offer services to children and individualize their goals to teach their goals to those students, they are not helping to make they do not help us so that we could have more students on our caseload. We would still need to stay at that 55. They help provide the instruction, the individualized instruction that is needed to assist our programs for students. Our assistants, I want to just do a little kudos to our speech staff. Our special ed assistants and our speech language pathology assistants have been working diligently during COVID-19 to provide access to every single student in speech therapy, and that's over 330 students. There was a 48-hour period in which they were putting out 330 packets of individualized distance learning programs to all of the students. They were stuffing envelopes, they were addressing, and they were sending those out. These are not speech assistants or special ed assistants that are just waiting for a phone call to say, what can I do next? They have stepped up to the plate and they are doing what they need to do to help access education for those students. The other thing I want to state is that I'm following along with Pam Rosen and all of the things that she said about the duties that we have been assigned during COVID-19. I personally filled out, filed, called, and did 41 amendments to the IEPs of students in speech therapy, of which I was the case manager during the initial state of a COVID-19 closure. That meant that I spent hours and hours and hours discussing these amendments with parents, writing them up, attaching them to our state mandated forms, uploading them, and directing those individuals with the guidance of Brooke Davis. After that, it was a weekend went by. The next time that we had a meeting with our SELPA director, she said, and it could have been a 2-week period, in which she said those amendments are not necessarily needed, that COVID-19 has switched the platform to addressing individual goals, and we need to use the distance learning model. So we switched gears again, and we asked our speech assistants to, again, send out packets and information. By the way, Leslie Machado was also instrumental in that we were one of the first departments to put our platform out on the Delmar Unified School District so that the students could access their speech therapy enhancement materials online, in addition to paper materials that we had sent out to 330 students. So we are working diligently. We are overtaxed. This morning, we were told that our traveling speech assistant, our traveling speech therapist who serves part of our caseload may not be able to be rehired in that capacity next year, and that caseload will now be transferred onto our caseload, which will increase our caseload size, each one of us. So when Jamie Faulkner asked exactly what is it that the speech department needs, I would again state that increasing our caseload size is one thing that we do not need. We are all above our caseload size according to the amount of time that we are each spending in our job. And asking for a preschool speech therapist, it would help assist the person who has the largest caseload that is serving the preschool kids. That assessment tool is needed in order for children to qualify for services and to gain the access to education in their individualized program. So that preschool piece might be something that maybe a half-time speech therapist could be hired. It would need the school board's direction because it is not something that's on the budget. Thank you.
Ryan, any other public comment?
Yes, Cindy. Cindy, you should now be allowed to unmute your mic.
So Ryan, if we could go to the next comment, we can come back to Cindy if.
All right. The next comment is Paige Thompson.
Hi, Paige Thompson here. I am speaking as a teacher and a community member in regards to the grading policy, especially for high school students. When kids are able to come to school, it really levels the playing field as much as we possibly can, because then we have regular access to food. We have stable environments. We're able to give them places to calm down. We're able to give them extra adult support via IAs or buddy classrooms. And even at the high school level, I know that schools are important for that. And it's been very clear from the state of California not to do any harm to students in grading. And I think it's wonderful that students will be able to improve their grades, but even allowing students to lose 1 or 2 grades, like if you had a B and you don't participate now and then you have a D, that is so unfair. We have no control, and we don't really even have a good idea of what life is like inside everyone's home. Kids might have jobs that they're doing now. Kids might be looking out for siblings. Kids might be wondering, have unstable home environments. And I don't think it's okay for us to allow students to lose any grade points at all. I loved what was mentioned about maybe doing pass fail or credit no credit, but it's a big deal. If you have worked really hard to get that, 3.5 or 3.2, and you were able to do that because, like Angela Stanley said, you come to school for 7 hours. And for those 7 hours, you have stability and you have an even playing field. Even though we have done an amazing job of making sure kids have computers, making sure that we're still giving kids paper packets, like we do not have any control over what happens to those things once they're in those kids' homes, if they even have homes. And I think that we would be doing a huge disservice to our students, especially our high school students, to put them in any sort of a situation or give them any pressure to make them feel like their grades were at risk.
Ryan?
All right. Cindy, you're back in. Are you allowed to speak now? You should be able to unmute your mic.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yay, sorry about that. My name is Cindy Brugge. I'm a speech language pathologist assistant. And I would first like to say that our speech language pathologists, special education teachers and teachers, and all of the classified staff have done a remarkable job in this very difficult and ever-changing environment. One of my concerns, and I know this is a future concern, is that this is a traumatic experience for our students, their family, and our staff. So I would like to have the idea of what are we going to do prior to school reopening to educate our teachers and our classified staff on how to recognize and support not only students but staff that they are seeing that are having signs of trauma, and how are we going to help our students and staff when school comes back into session. So that's something that I would like the school board to start thinking about, because it's going to happen. This is such a traumatic experience for everyone, and we as a staff need to know how to handle it. So thank you very much.
All right. Shannon Walkley.
Are you there, Shannon?
I can see that Shannon's unmuting her mic, but there is nothing coming in here. Shannon, this is Ryan. You may want to try exiting the session and rejoining. At this point, there are no other public comments.
And Shannon, if you would like, you can also email me and I'll make sure that it gets forwarded to the board members.
No other public comments then?
Not at this point.
We're going to close public comments and move on to board member report. Do we have any board members? Don? No reports? All right, then we'll move on to the student board member.
So before she goes, can I just, I'm never sure when to jump in there.
This is
but
board member.
This is my board member report. I do hear what several of the people are saying about changing the requirements and doing, asking people to do a lot of work and then coming back later and saying, oh yeah, well, we really didn't need that. And I would like everyone to be mindful of that. It drives me nuts when people do that to me. So be mindful before rushing headlong into telling people they have to do a lot of work, that is really how we're going to go, and try to make it as smooth as possible. They didn't do that with my son's IEP. So there wasn't that big, having to do a big. So again, I think there's some inconsistency depending on who's at the specific sites and who's working on those specific site things.
Right, yeah. To avoid a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, just be mindful of the extra work and make sure that it's really
more concise in what we're putting out there. Great, thank you. All right.
Things change.
Well,
Every minute, I mean, it's not even hourly anymore, it's every minute there's something new, so it's hard
I deal with
to
it.
stay on top of it.
I heard big money.
And
At the
Frank,
board? Huh?
sorry, I
Oh.
just wanted to give a real quick update. I know I've been on at least the state level. Shout out to our assembly member, Jim Wood, and our senator, Mike McGuire. They are actually been put on the digital access task force for the state, and they've been meeting to talk about rural communities and the need for digital access. That it's great that the state's saying do all of these things, get people computers, have all this stuff, but they're also there with others and asking the network providers, what are you doing? What can you do? And talking with the state superintendent, like, that sounds great that we want to just give access to students, but we need to understand that there are places in rural California, in low-income California, and some of our hardest hit minority communities that don't have access, that this isn't available for them, and also for our special needs. And so I just wanted to say there's some great conversations happening there on the state level. They've been putting them on the California Education Facebook page and their website, so you could watch them. But these are questions that we're all having to discuss. There was some great comments on that Facebook stream and those comments from other communities. And it's been really kind of encouraging to hear that we're not the only ones, that we're still all working together. But just to let you know that's happening on the state level, that there's a lot of conversations, because it's definitely going to change how we give access to our communities in the future, when we are just having devices given to them. But what good are devices if they don't even have access to the internet?
Right. Anybody else? All right, you got the floor on this.
Okay, so don't have like a visual report, just kind of oral today. So as a student, I've had a pretty good access to the online and paper copies of what's being pushed out for distance learning. However, I know it's only the first week. And also, I know that I'm an AP student who's really focused on my education. So I know that obviously I'm going to find those resources. So I know that I can't make that generalization for every other student. So there's some struggle, but it's the first week. So I'm hopeful that it gets better. And then also I would like to strongly recommend, since I'm a college-bound student, that our high school students have the option to at least choose a pass-fail format if it's not the requirement for them in through G courses, if not all, so it doesn't hurt their chance to go to college.
Okay. We're going to take a 5-minute break. It's up to you. Yeah, 5-minute break. Unmuted. Unmuted. Okay. All right. Consent, can I get a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
You get a second? You have a question?
I don't have any questions.
You get a second?
I'll second, but I do have a question.
Okay, we do that in discussion. Yeah, let's have the.
So I went through all the warrants. But it's hard, I know that we're supposed to approve the warrants, but it feels difficult to do that in kind of a vacuum of what we're supposed to be looking for and how do we know that certain things are what was budgeted. I'm just kind of looking for how the rest of you guys, since I'm new to this, how the rest of you guys approach those warrant lists. What do you guys look for? And
So if I could give a piece of advice, and it would be up to you as a board to do what you will with. I think having a conversation about how we approach it may be a topic for a planning session instead of a particular action item, unless there are specific questions on an item,
okay,
because that may take us a little off.
yeah, no, that's fine. I would be thrilled.
All right.
Questions from the public?
Ryan, are there any questions from the public?
No, not at this point.
Okay. Can I get a second?
I
Oh, she said. And then you please poll.
Mrs. Faulkner?
Yes.
Preferential vote?
Yes.
Mrs. Greeno?
Angela, you there?
Oh, there we go. Is that better? It's plugged in now. Abstain from the March 3rd warrant. Apologies.
Mr. MacArthur?
Yes.
Margarino?
Yes. All right, let's move on to reports. Delmar Teachers Association, Mr. Marshall Jones.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I hope everyone's safe and healthy at this point. Marshall Jones, Delmar Teachers Association. Our teachers from all over the district, as you well know, are doing an amazing job ensuring that their students shall have access to learning and the opportunity to connect and grow at a time when many things around them are not thriving. I've been very encouraged and inspired by all of our classified employees, our certificate employees, going well above and beyond to set up their new virtual classrooms. Ladies and gentlemen, this Monday, April 27th, is the official second/first day of school. I consider the last week's summer school. I'm hopeful that our hard work will serve our students well over the next 7 weeks. Thank you for that report. I made it brief tonight because for the remaining portion of the DNTA report, I would like to have Ryan bring up Paige Thompson, the lead negotiator and grievance chair for DNTA. Ryan, could you please do that for me? And thank you, everyone, for what you're doing.
Hi, everyone. Paige Thompson, DNTA lead negotiator. School board, we are $10,600 away from settling the 1920 contract. If the most recent offer from DNUSD was on the table last August, we wouldn't even be talking about this. The issue here is retroactive pay. If movement had been made in any of the 9 months prior to fact finding, we would not be talking about retro pay. We often talk about budgets as pies. At the beginning of this year, DNUSD gave DNTA a piece of pie. There was a dollar amount budgeted for certificated expenses this year. At the board study session a month ago, 2 certificated positions were removed from the budget. That decreased DNTA's piece of the pie. Right now, while schools are closed, DNUSD is saving money on substitute teacher costs, which is also part of DNTA's piece of the pie. I asked the district to run a report for what 1 month of substitutes costs. In February, the district spent $45,000 on subs. Some of that money is tied to specific budgets, but at least $17,000 of that cost was unrestricted, and $19,000 of that was for special ed. If we extrapolate that over the 3 months that schools will be closed, that's $108,000 of DNTA's piece of the pie in substitute teacher savings. At the last board meeting, there was discussion of the budget and making tough decisions about priorities. I think it's apparent after hearing from board members, the community, and employees that people are what makes schools work. The personal contact is what makes schools work. DNTA's bargaining team needs some of that personal contact with the board. DNTA and DNUSD are meeting at the bargaining table tomorrow at 3:30, and we need 2 board members to be present. We have serious concerns right now about transparency and the board's realization of the big picture of what's truly going on. I spoke with Colleen Parker earlier, and she is aware that I'm extending this request. I know only 2 of you can attend, but I truly believe it's necessary. Please, school board, 2 of you attend at the bargaining table tomorrow at 3:30. We can send you an invitation. I don't know if you want to draw straws, flip a coin. I don't know how you want to decide who attends with us, but we do it via Zoom, and it would be wonderful to have you there.
Moving on to California School Employees Association, George Mercado.
I think Sarah Mitchell will be speaking for CSEA tonight.
Hi, guys. So,
Hey, Sarah.
just real quick, I do just want to say that I would like to address the issue that when a board member asks a very relevant question and nobody has an answer, and then Mr. Harris speaks for them to say that we'll talk about that in closed session, when it's a very valid question and it's just about organization, I would hope that at least perhaps pieces of that conversation could come back to the public, because those are certainly questions that I think we all have. And with trust issues already at the table, I think it just compounds those issues. So that's just that little piece. But then on to that, some better news is that CSEA Great Northern 178 is pleased to announce the ratification of both of our tentative agreements on the 2019-2020 agreements. We want to thank both of the negotiation teams for your efforts to settle these agreements for the classified staff. Thank you to the school board for your support through this process. Our chapter had our first Zoom meeting April 16th, and it was a success. Not only did we we had a great turnout, and we got to check in with our members, and it's been actually awesome because we actually had a very big turnout. So it was really cool to check in with all those people we hadn't gotten to see. And we had a lot of business that had piled up. So we got to do a lot of business, share a lot of information. So it just felt really good as a membership to really come together. So I see some great things in our future. We were able to have some great discussions and share information, and our team is using that information to draft an initial proposal for the 2021 contract. At this point in time, the school district has not contacted our team to outline the sunshining procedures for initial proposals. After the presentation at the March 26th school board meeting, where Ms. Klein provided guidance on sunshining proposals, it was discussed that the district would contact both CSEA and DNTA bargaining teams to outline procedures. We look forward to the district reaching out to both of our teams to solidify these procedures, and we appreciate the board's support in these efforts. We'd like to get that done before our initial proposals, which we are hoping to have at the May 7th board meeting or the following one at the latest. So we'd definitely like to get that outlined so that confusion can just be cleared up. We want to thank all the classified staff, many who typically have the week of spring break off, who continue to show up on the front lines to keep the children in our community fed. Our nutrition department at the time I wrote the report on Monday morning had served 19,690 meals during spring break and 94,653 since school closures began. I think I saw somewhere posted it was over 100,000 now. So the amazing nutrition staff and everyone who stepped up to support them deserve many, many thanks. In addition, our transportation department is rocking it. Our bus drivers are driving nearly 250 miles a day to deliver meals and curriculum to children and families in our community. On a 5-day week, that's over 1,200 miles. So a big thanks to all the staff who've been supporting our transportation department and handing out curriculum. And let's not forget our mechanics who keep our buses running and safe. The technology department has been working tirelessly to break down technology carts and make sure families in our communities have access to technology. I know they've handed out hundreds, if not thousands of devices. They have been answering questions and training people on Zoom and beyond. So we really want to thank our technology staff and everyone who's been stepping up to support our IT department. Our after-school staff have been working hard to create and implement emergency childcare opportunities in our community. This has been a huge undertaking led by some amazing classified staff. We want to thank the classified staff who are selflessly stepping up to ensure the essential childcare needs of our community are met. Of course, the only problem with starting to name people who deserve thanks is there really just isn't enough time to name them all. So just real quickly, our instructional support and library staff have been helping teachers create and implement distant learning opportunities for students, as well as stepping up in the many needed areas around our district. Our OTs, PTs, SLPAs, LBIs, LVNs, and preschool teachers are learning to navigate these new expectations and modes of education and service delivery while maintaining contact and supporting families. This is a tireless and long effort. It's totally worth it when you get to talk to families and connect, but it's exhausting. Our secretarial and clerical staff continue to support our school sites, staff, and families. And of course, our business office continues to keep the business of the district functioning and our staff paid, which we certainly appreciate. And last but not least, our maintenance and operations staff, including maintenance, grounds, and custodial, are working hard to maintain and keep our schools clean and safe during these facility closures. So as you can see, the classified staff have been very busy continuing the essential work of our district. We look forward to continuing to work with the district to improve the lives of our members, students, and community. Thank you for your time and support.
Great.
For that. So I just want to thank you, Sarah, for submitting the report in writing in time for it to be included on the agenda materials. It was very helpful to have that to review before I came to the meeting. So I did want to address the question about the reaching out about the sunshining provisions. Is that something that did you understand that they were waiting for you guys to reach out to them on how to do that? Or
I didn't know it had been moved forward. I've asked Colleen to make sure that that is completed by next Friday.
Okay, cool. And then I'm not sure if you were referencing the question that I asked about the warrant approvals, but my understanding from what Mr. Harris said is that we want to do a study session for that, and study sessions are open to the public. So whenever we get together to talk about that sort of thing, it would be a public forum that other people could come into.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlene, because I was referencing that. And so I would absolutely love to be a part of that meeting just so I could get some clarity as well. So thank you.
Sure.
All right. Let's see. Let's go to the superintendent's report, Mr. Harris.
So I am actually going to let Tom, we've done a lot of stuff, but it's really been around distance learning. I would just like to take 2 seconds. Shannon Walkley did not have an opportunity to do public comment. Her microphone wasn't working. So if I could just very quickly read you her public comment. She said, I wanted to comment that I appreciate the classified staff and their efforts, especially the staff providing bus deliveries of food. They've been very professional, cheerful, and their deliveries offer a much needed break in our day when we get to see people other than our household and neighbors. I didn't hear it mentioned, so I'd like to recommend that if it's not already in place, that a retention alert system be implemented to give teachers support in contacting students who are not engaging. The presentations mentioned a grading system for students not returning to school, but what interventions are in place for those who are falling between the cracks. I'm grateful for the now daily opportunities for my son Dylan to meet with his teacher Ross Morgan and his classmates. I hope my high schooler will have similar opportunities. And again, that was from Shannon Walker. So, and just to piggyback on Sarah, we're over 110,000 meals served to date. And Ryan and I were also looking, I think Zoom meetings have been mentioned a couple of times. We have logged over, I believe, Ryan, what was it, close to 1,000 Zoom meetings and over 150,000 hours of time on the Zoom platform.
Yeah, and it's the curve is very steep. I think, yeah, we were watching 17 active at one point today, just in like a 2-minute span, and we were over 1,500 total.
Since the beginning of the facilities closures, right?
Yes, since March 16th. Yes, we're averaging. I forget. It was close to 150 a day or something now, and that's climbing.
So a lot of activity. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So I'll hand it over to Tom because a lot of our distance learning is built around that platform.
Okay, you got the floor.
Thank you. Can you pull up the presentation?
Is there a presentation?
There is.
Did you put it on there a little bit? Perhaps refresh it.
Been on there before the meeting.
There it is.
Okay. So I don't know if I remember exactly where I was on the 13th of March when the governor issued executive order for the physical closure of schools. But I do remember wondering exactly what is this going to look like and where are we going to be in 3 months or 6 months. By the 27th of this month, it will have been around 45 days. And it almost seems like it's been a lifetime since the beginning of this time period. If you go to the next slide, it shows a little bit of a timeline of where we were. It was that Sunday on the 15th where our board voted to physically close schools until April 9th. That began a fast and furious time of working, classified, certificated, and management working together to not only put together a plan for distance learning, but to provide the professional development that really provides the scaffolding and background for people to be able to do it well. We came back on the 9th this month, where we then found that it was going to be the end of the current semester, where schools would be physically closed. But we also knew that at that point in time, students wouldn't be able to come back to school, even in small groups. The work continued. And it got to the point where on the 20th, which is this Monday, we began our Bridge to Distance Learning Week, where the focus was on making sure that all of our students could be engaged and connected. And on Monday, it's school in session for everyone, full implementation of distance learning. So where we got started between March 16th, that Monday, and tomorrow, I also wanted to make sure that we included the preschool staff and teachers in this conversation too, because they're doing much of what the teachers in grades TK through 8 are doing. It was decided to agreed upon that we would make there would be office hours and some weekly check-ins. Our teachers would work together to prepare grade level standards work packet for distribution for all students. And that this work would also be uploaded onto the district webpage, and teachers would start providing digital content along with that packet work. The high school, with graduation around the corner and credits at stake, it was a multifaceted effort by our high school staff to first make sure that our special education students and our students on 504 plans and those who were in credit retrieval had an individual contact with staff. Our teachers began generating content and preparing work for makeup and enrichment. They began to create their Google Classroom pages. And at the same time, our counselors were creating a system where they could contact all of our students at the high school. The staff put it as a priority to connect with students who needed credit recovery so that they could continue to work towards graduation. And they also established 5 satellite locations throughout the county so that students could bring their work somewhere and pick up work someplace that would be easy for them. The students who needed Chromebooks got them. And they also created packets and modules which would be dropped off or brought to students 2 weeks at a time for those who couldn't access the Chromebooks. They thought of a lot of the things that were the barriers and really worked hard to get past those barriers. So as we began to, March kind of moved into April, we began to see a system put in place for professional development, and that's called Aludo. And Aludo is the background of the Big Tracks program where our teachers are learning how to use the Seesaw and Google Classroom programs that are now going to be in operation, started and are going to be in operation next week. Some actually decided to go a step further and pilot Canvas, which is a big, robust learning management platform, which has all sorts of different features. And those who wanted to do that could do that. But it's important to note that our youngest kids are using Seesaw because it's more developmentally appropriate, and our students from grades 3 through 12 using Google Classroom, sorry. Next. The timeline for PD. It was the week of 4/6 to 4/10 that the plan was shared. And teachers knew that they could select a platform that worked for them. And that's where it began to crystallize that Seesaw would be for K2, TK through 2, and then others would use Google Classroom. Some would want to use Canvas. And then we kind of morphed into actually coming up with the Aludo platform where teachers could proceed and go through different levels of knowledge and ability, skill level through this so that they could be as proficient as possible when it came to using Google Classroom or Seesaw. And now we move to the week of 4/27, where it's fully online. But for students who don't have access, those students are still going to get individualized instruction with their teachers. Well, going back to preschool where it all starts, our preschool teachers are also participating in this. They're providing work for students, and our students, our preschool students, our youngest on IEP, are getting more frequent contact from their support provider in addition to the teachers. Next. So it's this week now. This is the bridge to distant learning. And our superintendent just walked across the bridge there. This week is connection and engagement. The focus is establishing routines, procedures, and processes so that students and parents and families feel comfortable with those. Teachers continue to hold office hours. Work packets are still available for students who need them. And all the glitches and concerns and issues that people have, we're trying to work them out this week so we start fresh next week. Next. Okay, so in grades for all of our students to the end of the term. So now we're at the point where we're going to be providing Seesaw, Google Classroom, and some using Canvas. Posting recorded asynchronous instructional videos with the digital learning platforms. Holding digital video instruction, holding office hours, providing feedback using feedback forms, and keeping notes of the progress that students are making. That's all happening next week. And I'd like to point out at the high school, it already started happening. Next. So for grade levels, we want to continue to collaborate with each other and focus on those essential standards that students need to know, and make sure that they're providing additional opportunities to practice or extend the learning through the digital option and the paper packets that are posted. Of course, our students are expected to complete their tasks and provide in the learning and participate in the learning opportunities, but also communicate with their teachers at least twice a week, somehow, so that the engagement continues. Special education. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because Brooke covered quite a bit of it earlier, but it's important to note that our special education staff participated in the regular review of IEPs for students that they have, and that they're providing instruction using the digital distance learning platforms by next week. And case carriers can also use the CELPA distance learning plan, which is something that we talked about, to document work, contact with students and families, and communicate regularly as a team. There's been a little bit of confusion around the distance learning plan, and that's why we held back on it right now. But we're going to be talking with our teachers and support staff about whether or not we're going to be continuing to use the distance learning plan format. So distance learning platforms. Our students, whether they're special ed or general ed, get access to Seesaw, Google Classroom, or Canvas. And the providers are working with students via video conference or phone or in small groups and individually addressing their IEP goals. I think what's most important here is the focus on those goals and making sure that our teachers and support staff are addressing the goals in the IEP and are finding ways to actively communicate with families. We talked earlier about grading at the high school. I'm going to talk a little bit about grading TK through 8. And I think a few people had talked earlier, including our high school principal, about making sure we first do no harm with our grading. So for our elementary and middle school students, there won't be any letter grades submitted in the third trimester. But the feedback would be in whether they completed the work, showing that the students executed the task required, whether they're demonstrating that they're progressing in the work, or whether the work is missing, where the student has not submitted the assignment. And then we're also going to be checking to make sure that our kids are participating and engaged. Our teachers are going to keep track of our weekly student contact through Zoom, phone, email, or whatever method that they use. And we've now created a standardized form for that engagement and participation. At the high school, the principal talked about it, Principal Fugate talked about that already. The A through D scaling scale for the semester for students who are already receiving credit or this A through D grading. And in some courses, a C or better would be required to move forward. Those would be for courses that are dependent on a skill acquired in the prerequisite course. And for people who are in disagreement about the process or the grade that they got, there is an appeal process at the high school.
So Tom, if I can just kind of kick in here, I think Jamie said a few minutes ago, things aren't changing daily, they are changing by the minute. So another piece of information, and Randy alluded to it, that we received early this week was, I think it was Tuesday, that we were told that UCs and CSUs were really only going to be looking at pass fails, that giving a grade could disqualify students from entering college and could negatively impact them moving forward. And you could also have some unforeseen circumstances with CIF and athletics. So I know he's having discussions with his staff about what that means and how we can still utilize grades for the purposes of maybe potentially determining things like valedictorian and those kind of pieces, but give a final mark that's consistent with what would make our students competitive with other students around the state. So again, even these things are in flux at this point, which is again why I asked the board to drop the board policy about grading from tonight's agenda so that we can continue to flesh this out. I'm sorry, Tom.
Go on to the next, please. So I also wanted to share what our principal and staff and team have been doing at Sunset High School. Back on the 16th, was the day after the board meeting where we talked about the closure of schools. Sunset started right away setting up individual student work folders based on the students' credit needs. Teachers updated their Google Classrooms. Staff started hosting Zoom sessions with their students almost immediately. They utilized their van to make home visits, deliver and pick up student work and food. They checked out Chromebooks to the students who needed them and made sure that they were holding regular meetings and they really focused on that engagement and contact and held weekly Zoom meetings and assemblies. Staff awarded participation points to students who participated. And Mr. Fabricas and his staff have stayed so close and in such contact with their students. They didn't want anyone to fall behind and wanted everybody to continue making progress. So Sunset is right there with our high schools, our K-8 schools and our preschools in making sure that our students and our families are connected and are doing valuable work. What I'd like to close with is sort of, if we could go to the district's COVID-19 webpage, because what I'd like to do is share with you something that Superintendent Harris talked about earlier. That is the family resource button on that page to show people what family resources we have available.
So we're gonna show a really quick link, a quick way to get there. So Jeff, if you go ahead and pull that up.
All right, so
Yeah, just go ahead and, so you want to exit full screen so you can get to your just hit escape. Now up at the top, if you just type in DNUSD.org.
Okay.
/family support.
Typing correctly?
Yep.
Support all one word?
Yep. So DNUSD.org/family support. That should take you right to the information that families need. That's a little bit quicker than digging around on the website.
And if you can scroll down a little bit, there are questions that are answered. If you go down a little bit further, what it looks like what does Google Access look like? Scheduling your students' learning. What types of devices are students using? How do you use that? How would I access support? If I had a question about the technology, what if I have a question about the assignments? What about the work that is being given? How do I toggle through? If I have one child who's in kindergarten, I have another child who's in 4th grade, how do I learn about Seesaw and Google Classroom? A lot of it's right here. But it also has other excellent resources that you can that families could use to learn about how to help their kids get through this difficult time. I think that this is a wonderful page and a tremendous resource that our team put together to help families learn more about helping their students access their education during this time. That's it.
All right. Any questions?
Oh, I have a lot, Frank.
Okay.
So a big question that I see through all of this, like, thank you guys so much to the staff and everyone for putting up this great website full of resources. But a big question is, what about the families that can't make it to office hours during that time? I know we have office hours for teachers and stuff, but parents are struggling to find answers to some of these problems. Some of the questions on the homework, but they don't come home till 6 o'clock at night, 5 o'clock at night. And how are their students supposed to be getting help when they themselves can't even contact the teacher because they were at work during that time?
Okay, so this question actually came up in a meeting we were having the other day. Is the exact same question. And all of our teachers have email. Many of them do contact parents by phone. And what if a parent calls a teacher or emails a teacher about a question or a problem? In most cases, the teacher is going to get back to the parent fairly quickly and try to help the parent. And it may not be during those office hours, but it could be at a different time. But they would probably work together to arrange that.
So contact the teacher during that office hour, during unoffice hour times, and your teacher should be able to contact you back.
The teacher should contact you back. You don't always have to contact the teacher during office hours. You can call or email anytime. And our teachers get phone calls and emails from parents all the time as it is. And those calls don't always happen at the same time. But our teachers are usually pretty good about getting back to parents and finding a time that would be mutually agreeable to have a conversation and about what support is needed.
And Angela, I think too, as we go forward, there are going to be lots of really interesting solutions, I think, that are going to be coming out. If I think you're going to see teachers who are doing tutorials around things and giving additional supports, right? You're also going to see teachers that are partnering up and saying, get a hold of this teacher if you have a question in this content for this grade level, and we'll work those out. And maybe posting tutorials or videos or screencasts or whatever that walk families through that. We may also see teachers who are recording what they're doing with students in the classroom. Like I said, I saw a beautiful example at our childcare facility the other day with a student working in a class with a few other students. They were doing one activity, he was doing the second. He was on an iPhone, and he and the teacher were having a back and forth conversation, not necessarily during an office hour, but during a Zoom hour. Because remember, office hours are kind of that when I could be free to take a variety of questions, but there's also their Zoom classroom. There are these other times that people would be available. And then on the district side, if you go back to that family support page, we also have ways that families, because we know it's not just the content, it's also how do I use the device? How do I get into the classroom? How do I log into my Seesaw account? All of those are on that page as well. And we have an FAQ. And as we get those, if we need to walk people through a screencast or something, we're going to continue to develop those tools. And we can do those almost on demand to make sure that we're developing a library for families to be able to use. But we do know that and we have live helplines from, I believe it's 8 to 4, 8 to 5 every day as well, that people can call in and say, hey, I had a quick question. Can you help me do this with my computer? Or my child can't log in. So we're making sure that those things are available as well. So I think we're finding answers to issues as they pop up, and we're trying to answer them as fully upfront as we can.
And then, of course, the big question, what does all of this lead up to graduation? What are some of the thoughts of going into the future of this? Graduation, what's going on with that?
Well, so graduation itself, we've had a ton of different ideas, but I think that's really what we want to hit tomorrow. I had a meeting set with the high school principals last Friday to really kind of, or maybe it was the Friday before spring break, I don't know, it's starting to blur, to talk about what graduations might look like. Because I've said from the beginning, I want us to plan for the event that we're able to have a graduation like normal, knowing that may not be possible. So I want to plan for eventuality. So we've dug into a lot of different things around graduation. I know that Randy, Tony, Rob, Jeff, Allison have been talking to people about what might it look like. I know Liz has been kind of digging into it and they've been looking. And tomorrow we have a webinar. We have a Zoom meeting with potentially up to 185 high school seniors, along with the high school principals and me to really talk about what might some of these options look like as we go into graduation. Because like I think Frank, you had mentioned, this is a real milestone. We want this to be as personal. We want it to be as traditional. We want it to be as, I'll use the word normal, as we can possibly make it. But we don't necessarily know what that looks like at this point. We're probably going to have to include at some point our county health officer as well in that conversation to say, here's the best idea we've got. Would you support this moving forward? So we'll know more about that, I think, tomorrow and in the coming weeks, because we're also keeping a really close eye on the stay-at-home orders and what those are going to look like maybe over the next 2 to 4 weeks. So there could be some shifting.
Another question that comes up with about the packets. Are those just for students who don't have access, or could it be for students who just don't feel comfortable, or families who don't feel comfortable using the technology? How do they get a hold of those packets? And what will the turnaround look like of getting those packets back? Of like, you know, if there's a question, like, do they have to complete every single thing in that packet? Or are they able to like leave some questions blank and then hopefully get feedback? And what would the feedback look like?
Well, that was actually, I had a conversation before this meeting with a parent who called and said, look, I know my child can have access to a Chromebook, but at this point, I would prefer that she just do the packet work. And it was a child, it was a very young child. And the parent said, is that okay? And I said, of course it's okay. If that's what your preference is, we can do that. We're working on developing a system to get the packets out to the students who need them. We're trying to identify the kids who need the packets, get those packets out to them early in the week, and then get them returned to us, say like on a Friday. And then we would have the packets and let them sit over the weekend, so that the packets would have time where they wouldn't have any human contact for a few days, and then get them to the teachers, who would then provide the feedback to the students. So, I mean, that's kind of in a rough way of describing it, how we would do that. But we do have people, this conversation happened just earlier today, where the parent said, is that okay if I do that? Will I get feedback and will it be meaningful? And the answer is yes, you will get feedback and it will be meaningful. That's your choice.
And we have parents who want both. They want the paper packet, but they also want to access the digital content. And that's fine too. At this point, it's whatever works for your child, because it really is about supporting our kids as we move
on. So I guess this is the plan for the rest of the year?
Well, this is the plan until we end school this year. But I think it's important to note that it often takes years for organizations to develop distance learning plans. This is something that our team put together in a very short amount of time. And we know that the one thing that we do know, of all the things that we don't know, is that education is going to look different when we come back in the fall. It's probably not going to look as traditional as it always did. We don't know what that's going to be like. But what we will have invested in as a district, as a team, and as a community, is building a structure or a blueprint for something that can be utilized in lots of different ways for the future. So I think that the structure being there is only something that we can build on.
I mean, this would be great if we come back to a traditional school at the beginning of the next semester, next school year. Kids that go home sick can actually Zoom into their class. You know?
Well, and I tell you, I
And
think
that would eliminate completely the absentee. Because they can come in, hey, they're homesick, they're laying in bed, they can Zoom into their classroom and be a part of they wouldn't miss a day of school.
and we don't know what it might look like, but I do have to tell you, Paige Thompson was talking the other day, and she said, please tell us that all the work that we're putting into these online systems isn't going away. We want to be able to keep this as a great tool. During the webinars that we had yesterday too, by the way, which are going great, we had over 220 people key into one of the webinars yesterday, but I think it was one on distance learning. But we had parents who said, please tell us this may be an option next year, even if schools go back to normal, that we would love to continue this distance learning option. So we're talking right now, we're planning on what might this look like in a normal year. How might this augment and become part of our normal operating process?
So I still have some concerns about the actual instruction. And that wasn't clear on how that's going to happen, because the online stuff in the packets assume that the child has been instructed on how to do the work in the packet or how to do the work in the online tool. And that's not necessarily the case when you're supposed to be moving on to new material. So what is the expectation for teachers to actually record or provide instruction on new material as we move through the school year? And how is that going to be accessible to us parents who then have to sit down with our kid and say, okay, this is how you add up fractions, and this is how you make 7/5 into 1 2/5. And so, yeah, well, believe me, we don't do it the same way they're being taught how to do it.
Well, it's our hope that through the digital learning platforms that people will be able to log on and they will be able to participate in discussions around new information that is provided. It's not just going to be all review of information that they've already learned. What we've also seen is in some of the packets that have gone out, it's been a review of some key content standards. But there is an expectation that new content will be taught and will be provided. And for those who only have the ability to get the information to a packet, it really is incumbent upon the teacher to work with the parent and the student to make sure that they're still providing that support, whether that be over the telephone or email or some other way that they can make that contact.
Yeah, I agree with Shalane. Those packets, they're good and dandy, but if a student gets to a point where they don't understand it anymore, how are they gonna get to the point that they do understand it and move forward to the next level? That's that's a big deal.
So if I can kind of peel the onion a little bit, I want to go all the way back to when the governor first issued the executive order. This isn't teaching as normal. If you listen to Governor Newsom when he held his first press conference talking about this, what he said is, parents, you need to prepare to homeschool your children, right? So this is about homeschooling. It's not about the instructional model that I think we're all used to since 1923. So it really, because that model, really when you start talking about all the instructional methodologies that are out there, Madeline Hunter, ITIP, whatever, it really is about talk about why this is important, show how connected to something kids already know, do direct instruction so they understand the new learning, and then you do guided practice so that they feel comfortable with it and everything that they're going to see. So you're walking them through all the tasks that you're going to ask them to do. And then once they demonstrate proficiency on those tasks, then you release them to independent practice where they're practicing those tasks and being able to independently then do the work and then ask clarifying questions. And for those students that are still struggling, and this goes back to our MTSS pyramid, those students may get a little bit more instruction or even intervention, right? That's not this. The intent of this from the very beginning was to provide high quality educational opportunities, not instruction. So it really is, how do we continue to provide kids an opportunity to engage with academics? How do we connect those opportunities to standards? How can we, to the best of our ability, get those opportunities out to students? And how can we help the families and help kids engage with those opportunities? But it's not the same as high quality instruction. And so I think that's the hard part too with crisis learning. Nobody signed up for this, right? People who were comfortable doing this signed up at Castle Rock, or they signed up for USA. And even the ones at USA, most of them were doing the onshore program, which was coming to school every day, right? So you only had a few that were the not offshore program. So as we talk about this, I really would encourage folks to remember, these are high quality distance learning opportunities. It's not distance instruction. So that being said, that was kind of gloom and dooming. Our teachers are doing a lot.
And they are providing new content.
They are providing new content. They are providing videotape lessons. They are providing Google Classroom supports. They are pointing kids toward different resources that help them move ahead. Ryan mentioned at the point that we logged on today, we were looking at the dashboard. And while we can't go into a Zoom meeting, there were many meetings that were one-on-one meetings with students and teachers, or one-on-two meetings with students and teachers. So there were a lot of those opportunities where kids were actually being tutored. Matter of fact, there was one tutoring session that was going on, and it was labeled tutoring, where there were, I believe, 27 students in the room getting tutoring in math. And I'll just call out that teacher because they were doing a great job. I think that was Chris Rice that we saw. So we know that there are those opportunities that are going on for students. So it's not just we're going to push it out and here's good stuff, hope you get it. They are giving supports, but it's not going to be the same as it was, because you also heard
in the classroom.
Yeah, we also heard I didn't run out of my head. Nicole Cochran say earlier, right now some of the guidance is about an hour and 20 minutes a day of actual engagement with written curriculum.
Is about 5 hours a week.
About 5-6 hours a week. So really that is kind of the thought process with all the input that we've received from folks. So it's not going to be anything like a regular day at school. So
Liz, how is this working out for you?
I'm having a variety of stuff with my classes. Some are doing bi-weekly Zooms, some are doing screencasted lessons of the content and then having us fill it out. Some are having us use Classroom to complete assignments. But for me, it's working out well, but I don't know if that's the same for the average student that kind of just goes to school and does what they're supposed to and goes home and doesn't really have as much of a drive.
Do you feel like, let's say if you were in school, are you progressing as if you were, or do you feel like there's something missing there, other than the social content?
Yeah, the social content is the main thing, especially as a senior, because these are a lot of moments.
Yeah.
But I guess education-wise, the information's out there from your teachers, and you can always ask more questions, and you can always reach out and do more. So I think it really depends on the student to what you're going to get, to what they're going to get out of it.
And I think the flip side of that is what families are actually able to offer, because families are working. Families may not have the education. I mean, if my son was in calculus, which thank goodness he was never in calculus, I couldn't go back and help him through calculus, right? I haven't taken calculus since college. But I do think that those are just things to kind of keep in mind. And again, teachers are doing a great job on getting stuff out there and helping to the fullest extent that they can. But it's not going to be the same. You know, Frank, you had said, do you feel like you're making as much progress? Unfortunately, I'm going to say, I don't think our students overall are going to make as much progress as if they were sitting in classes. They're missing out on music. They're missing out on language. They're missing out on art. They're missing out on daily interactions with math. They're missing out on the MTSS model of every kid gets it. Some kids get additional help and intervention. They're missing out on daily interventions. They're missing out on a variety resources that we provide as a matter of course and that people take for granted. And they're just not available in this format.
And the ability to even talk to your classmates, say, hey, can you help me out with this? Can you?
Yeah. But again, our staff is doing a great job given the limited tools that they have. It's like building a house with a hammer, a screwdriver, and a drill. Go for it.
It is amazing the shift. 2 months ago, we were sitting in a meeting here. None of us even thought about this. And where we've gone, how we were able to, we've been talking in Basque, the business people throughout the state. We are so far ahead of the majority of the state. And Ryan and I were talking about this because he's talking with his guys through SEPTA. I think one of the reasons we are is because we are a single unified school district. So we have the county office and the district working together. When this thing first started, a lot of the county offices closed down and they weren't able to support the districts. So the districts are floundering. We don't have that. We have been able to pivot, and not perfectly, chaotic new stuff coming every day, but the growth that our teachers, all of our staffs, the administrators, everything that's been done in the past 5 weeks, we wouldn't have even thought of this 8 weeks ago.
And we also have some really good technology. And a good IT.
Oh yeah, our tech is beyond reproach. They're phenomenal. And I have to tell you too, our principals, just like all the other things that are going on, our principals are meeting every morning for an hour to an hour and a half, getting topic after topic after topic, coming to the same understanding, coming to bringing critical questions forward. And we're moving down that path every day. So, yeah, I had that moment today where I'm like, oh my gosh, we've had 24 consecutive days of principals meetings. People have to get tired of that.
Any other
That's-
questions?
I mean, that's a good thing that can carry forward. That's one of those things that can carry on, is the principals should be talking to each other regularly. And you know, they don't have to necessarily all come to the same room and sit down. Now we know how we can use technology to facilitate that and not take them out of their school sites. But I don't want to lose sight, and I get it, and part of it is just, you know, me wanting to move faster and forgetting how quickly we've already moved. But I don't want to lose sight of the idea that we should be trying to get our kids as close to what they would be if we had semi-normal school. And again, just coming in the middle as a parent to try to, you know, they're in math, in the grade level here, they're in the middle of learning about fractions. So I don't know what instruction he's been provided already. I don't know how to tie the online stuff to what he's supposed to know. So there has to be some support for continuing that instruction on. And even some of the packets are, depending on where they came from, they may not be what was being taught in the classroom when the child left. And so you're sitting there going, okay, does he know this? Does he not know this? So I am concerned about having that support available for parents, because we are homeschooling and none of us signed up for that. And if we were intending to homeschool, we would have signed up with a service that was meant to support you homeschooling. So,
and that's why I really appreciate Judy Smith's term. You know, she says this is crisis learning. This really is crisis learning out of distance learning format. So.
Any other questions on this? All right. It's 15 information.
So, oh, so you guys just have your new CSBA policy pack there for your fun nightly reading.
Oh, good.
yeah, you guys can keep it.
We just will not.
I'll do it online.
We're not going to discuss anything?
No.
Just okay. All right, let's go over to action. Division of State Architecture, Inspector Contract for Summer Go Bond Project, Mr. Napier.
Yeah, so you know, the board has approved quite a few projects for this summer. Joe Hamilton modernization, generator for Margaret Keating, Redwood Elementary fire alarm, all these listed up here. all of these require a DSA inspector, which we are required to hire. John Craven has inspected for us before. There are 2 DSA inspectors within 300 miles of us here. John is one. He lives over in Medford area. And the other one lives down, Rich Fenton lives down in south of Eureka. Rich was our inspector on the high school project. John, we put out to them, what's to do. John submitted a proposal to do this. John has done inspections for us before. He's a good inspector. We're required to have the inspections. And so he presented this contract, which is within the norm. 3% is what the DSA inspector normally gets on a project. What's good about John and what he's done in the past is, and what he's going to do here is, since all these projects are going at the same time, we're not going to be getting billed for mileage for every single project. When he comes over here and he's inspecting 2 or 3 different projects, we're only going to get billed for the mileage for the one trip each time.
Where'd you say it was coming from?
Ashland.
Oh. And it's out of state?
Yeah, but he has his inspector's license through California, Department of State Architect.
So I heard you say there were 2 locally, or 2 within 300 miles. So we put out a request for
just those 2. Those are the 2 we use for normal things. When we did the high school, we did put out a request for anybody from out of the area. Were much more expensive because they're either flying up here or driving or so.
Well, it's 300 miles is a 5.5 hour drive.
Oh yeah.
So the other guy didn't submit anything?
No.
Can we just fly him here?
He was, well, he used to actually fly up sometimes. The other guy, he had his own plane. But the high school project was 3 years and he was here a lot. He's done with us for a while.
Oh.
Well, he's only about a 2.5 hour drive then.
Right. So we're just asking for the board to approve this contract because we can't do any work without the DSA inspector. Okay. Just take
So my only comment when I first saw that was just, it's difficult to approve projects when costs keep trickling in and we're trying to fix. So we had the contract for the HVAC replacement, and I think there was something else. So it's just, and then this shows up and it's like, oh, well, that's another cost on top.
Okay, well, the cost estimates that come for like the HVAC, when you said so much for the geo bond, the architect includes inspection in those contract costs.
So the amount we approved this
Here is part, correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is within the previous piece. This is just your approval of this
Of the
contract.
When we get the, well, remember what the architect says, it should cost this. Once we go to bid and we get the bids on, then we're going to know exactly how much it costs. But what the architect includes engineering, inspection, architect fees, usually 5% contingency, and then the actual cost of what he thinks the work will be.
Okay, that makes me happy.
Okay.
So I will make a motion that we accept the contract.
I'll second.
So let's see if there's any public comment.
Yeah. Ryan, do we have any public comments?
Not at this point, no.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Linda, can you poll, please?
Preferential vote?
Yes.
Mrs. Faulkner?
Yes.
Mrs. Greeno?
Yes.
Mr. Margarino?
Yes.
Mrs. Maisy?
Yes.
Mr. MacArthur?
Yes.
Okay. so we got that. And then 16B, CSEA 2019-20 contract tentative agreement, tentative for catastrophic leave. Colleen Parker.
Good evening. Before you tonight are 2 CSEA tentative agreements, and one, you'll open that first one. That's the financial piece. So we settled on a 3% increase that's retroactive and $100 additional on their health and welfare. They're currently $9,500. It'll go to $9,600. And then a one-time off-schedule payment of 0.5%. And so this is the financial piece, and this does get us above the $13 an hour requirement in the state for this year. So Our current range is 106A is $12.69, and this will bring us up to $13.07. So we're up over that legal requirement. So we are requesting that you approve both of the TAs. If you'll open the other one, please. Down. There you go. So this is the other tentative agreement, and I know this is not a clean, nice copy, but this is, CSEA has a 610 process, and they appreciate getting it this way so that when they get approval from their state, they can see exactly what the language is. So not as pretty, but this is how they prefer it. So we have a catastrophic leave language now that'll be starting in 2021, and also we've adjusted the personal necessity language there towards the bottom, so you can see how this will work. This will sunset on June 30, 2021, unless we extend it by mutual agreement. We have not had catastrophic leave in this district before, and so there's a lot of unknowns for all of us. And so CSEA is more than willing to work with us on what those unknowns are as we move through this with them. So we're excited to have the opportunity to try this out and see how it goes. So we're recommending that you approve both tentative agreements.
Any questions? Any public comment? Ryan?
Not at this time.
Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve CSEA's 2019-2020 contract tentative agreement, and also the tentative agreement for the catastrophic.
Second?
Second.
Linda, you poll, please.
Preferential vote?
Yes.
Mrs. Faulkner?
Yes.
Mrs. Greeno?
Yes.
Mr. Margarino?
Yes.
Mrs. Maisy?
Yes.
Mr. MacArthur?
Yes.
All right, let's move forward to 16D, resolution.
Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. Okay, move forward, resolution 19-2031, grading during emergency school closures. Mr. Harris?
All right, you're in the home stretch. So if we take a look, Jeff, when you get that up there, if you can scroll down to the indentation right there. So there's the actual resolution. So basically, if we just kind of pare it down, these are conversations we've already had. Teachers will continue to provide instruction assignments and assessments using distance learning tools, right? So that's that. The superintendent or designee, we have lots of designees. So we're talking Leslie and Ray, principals, everybody is working with our teachers, with our site administrators to develop and review those guidelines for attendance during instruction. So we've even had those ongoing conversations about attendance being linked to participation, those kinds of things. And the assignment of homework through distance learning and alternative means. So what does that look like? And remember, we're still really compiling some of that, which is why it's not coming to you tonight as a board policy recommendation. However, item 3, you do have board policy that explicitly talks about homework and makeup work. And so what the resolution is doing is it is asking for this basically to be waived. So kids aren't going to be penalized for absences, and they're going to get full credit for the work that they're doing, even if it's not done the day of, right? So within an amount of time. Students will be held harmless for spring of 2020 grades in the transition to distance learning. We're going to waive BP and AR 5121, which is how we assign grades, because again, we may be giving pass, fail, we may be giving credit, no credit. We're not going to be giving grades as they currently are in 5121. Grades are going to be calculated that reflect student achievement and learning, that supports progress they made. And again, this goes back to what the governor said on the March 13th webinar, public statement prior to school closure, right? So the focus really is what progress is being made in a regular instructional setting. Final grades would be determined using all assigned work through the end of the semester. So we're still going to look at those as we move ahead. Teachers shall assign those final grades based on third quarter grades or students' grades when the school shutdown occurred, with opportunities to increase the final grade. But again, grades may or may not matter, which is why we're talking about suspending BP and AR 5121. Elementary students shall receive the complete, progressing, or missing designation. So if a student does nothing, that's missing. If they are attempting, that is progressing. And if they're completing things, then they've completed the work that they've been assigned that's grade level standard. And then work is provided on essential standards. This isn't fluff work. It's not being pulled out of the air through some random selection process. They are linked to standards. And then finally, students will be given an opportunity to demonstrate understanding of applicable course content through assessments, projects, portfolios, or other means that teacher says is appropriate to the course. So basically what this does is it opens up through the policy process, suspends policies that require certain grades and processes. It expands the ability of our teachers to reach out to students in the most appropriate ways. So I would ask that you approve this resolution, and then hopefully by the next board meeting, we'll have hammered out some of those other very specific pieces that we can then bring forward as board policies on grading. And I also believe there's one on working from home. So we'll definitely be talking to the bargaining units about that one as well.
Any questions? Any public comments? Brian?
No, sir, not at this time.
All right. So now we don't have any discussion or wait, we need to get a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 1920-31 grading during emergency school closures.
Get a second?
A second. Oh, go ahead, Angela. It's yours.
I think she beat you, Don.
It's close. Any poll, please?
Preferential vote?
Yes.
Mrs. Faulkner?
Yes.
Mrs. Greeno?
Yes.
Mr. Margarino?
Yes.
Mrs. Maisy?
Yes.
Mr. MacArthur?
Yes.
All right, let's move on to discussion planning. Anything?
No, the only thing I would like the board to consider is we talked a little bit tonight about maybe a board study session and looking at agendas and those kind of things. We're in a different environment now. We're in a different mode of including folks and making sure that we're as transparent as we can be. So we might want to have that conversation as a study session. And remember, study sessions are public, so the public can observe just like they're doing now. The other thing too, and I don't know when Jeff's going to want to have this, and we don't need to set these tonight necessarily, but we are going to want to have additional budget conversations. May revise is going to be coming out. That's going to give us a little bit more indication, probably the week of the 11th, somewhere in there. We'll know a little bit more about that. And while May has always sounded really far off, it's next week. So, you know, as we kind of plow ahead, we're going to want to make sure that we're having some of these conversations so that we can get things really laid out to the best of our ability moving forward. So, again, if you do want to set those tonight, that's great. If you want to.
Well, we probably should wait till the revision.
We have to have a preliminary budget that has to be done the week after that. So,
would you have any idea or any indication of what it'll be before it comes out?
Stuff is leaking. They don't know. They know that it's not going to be as good as the governor's initial budget, but it would be better than the final budget.
So,
or what they're
you want to do it
saying.
before
well, so you have a board meeting on May 7th.
Right.
The week of the 11th is when the revision comes out, and then you have another board meeting on the 21st. So unless you wanted to, remember what we did was we normally would not have had the board meeting on May 7th. except for the fact that we moved everything forward to account for all of the graduations and everything else. If we are still wanting to hold graduation dates sacrosanct, then we can do that and we can maintain it, or we could move those dates up a week, which would then move the board meeting during the week of the governor's may revise. And then bump the budget up to the week of the 28th instead of the 21st.
Yeah, I really don't want to change anything if it's going to affect that graduation may remotely happen. So
when was graduation scheduled to be?
the 11th, right?
The 11th
Of June?
of June, which would be our normal meeting.
But we're talking about
June.
Right, so so we typically do the second and fourth Thursdays of each month. So in May, we went the 1st and 3rd. In June, we went the 1st and the 4th.
Oh.
So
I think we should leave it. If you want to just do a study session before, and you think you're going to have a decent idea of what it's going to look like, I'm up for that. If not, we could do it between the 11th and the.
So why don't we just wait, Jeff, and see, because sometimes while the governor's may revise has a certain requirement date, they often do it before.
Yeah.
So let's do that, and what we can do is we can do kind of a budget session and a board study session simultaneously.
Yeah.
And just kind of piggyback them. Okay.
Is that good with everybody?
I know that we had talked to about showing the budgets by department. And I
Right.
don't know if that's going to be part of the study session, or that's something I would definitely like to see. I don't know if everybody else would.
It could be, because that's what they're working on right now. And I know Jeff and Tom are going to have a lot of conversations about that next week.
All right.
Excuse me, I'm not clear exactly what you're proposing.
Oh, so Don, what we're talking about is waiting until we know when May Revise is coming out. And then having a study session that's a dual purpose study session, one on board processes and agenda design, and then the other half of that same meeting being a budget kind of study session, looking at what the May Revise is bringing out, look at what some of the budget assumptions are. But we wouldn't set that meeting until a little bit later, once we knew when May Revise was going to be released.
Okay, so no changes at this moment.
No.
Okay.
All right, other businesses? Nothing? Beg your pardon?
I said you gotta do your planning.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking at. So who's next? I think it's
Angela.
Angela, what is a good time for you?
Well, my schedule's kind of been clear. So, anytime works kind of,
You want to do it Cinco de Mayo?
Yeah, I'll bring my tacos and everything.
Can't do Cinco de Mayo.
What about May 4th? On Monday?
Isn't that a special day for you, Angela?
It's my wedding anniversary. That just happens to
bring Jason
coincide
with you.
with Star Wars Day.
Coming
Anyway.
costume. You let me know.
As long as that's earlier in the day, that's fine, because there is also a city council meeting and we have one office in this house. So
Oh, do you want to do it Zoom in or do you want to do it in person?
Zoom in will probably be best.
That's easy.
I
enough.
have, yeah.
That's fine. I'll be there. We can do it.
As long as you're appropriately distanced. I'm
Oh,
good.
yeah. 10 o'clock sounds good?
10 o'clock.
All right.
Perfect.
Anything else? All right. Meeting adjourned.